Life sometimes gives people completely incredible surprises that change everything around them in an instant, and no one can predict when exactly this will happen. But most people are sure that such amazing and terrible events happen only to someone else and will never affect them personally in their ordinary life. The main character thought the same when she opened her eyes, and at first could not understand where she was and what was happening around her at that very moment. It seemed that she had fallen asleep while reading the novel, and now her consciousness was in some strange and unfamiliar place, as if between sleep and reality. She remembered how a few hours ago she had been lying down, immersed in reading a novel that had captivated her so much that she hadn't noticed how she had dozed off. In her thoughts, she once again replayed the story of how the mother-in-law in that very novel was incredibly cruel and merciless, like the living embodiment of evil. For the average reader, this might seem too cruel, but it was precisely because of such anger and hatred that the main characters got divorced. After Ellen received the divorce notice, she used snake venom to induce a miscarriage in Layla, ruining not only her life, but also her child's. Layla lost her child, and this event became a turning point that affected the destinies of everyone around her. Later, when Marlborough became king and learned of what had happened, he was horrified and decided to punish the culprits in the most severe manner. He ordered that this villainess be captured and executed in such a way that no one would forget the price paid for her cruelty and betrayal. The woman was burned alive, and her death was horrible and painful, like a well-deserved punishment for the cursed witch that was spoken of in terrible legends. Suddenly, the heroine felt herself becoming very sleepy, as if the force of fatigue had become irresistible, and her eyes began to close on their own. She realized that it was time to end the day and go to bed, because her body and mind needed a rest that was long overdue. While reading the novel, she learned that since she fell asleep, it meant that what was happening was truly a dream, in which everything was possible and nothing was real. She turned to the man lying next to her and noticed his surprise, as if he expected that she would not recognize him in this new world. He answered her by telling her that he was her husband, Earl Philip Morris, the man whose presence was to change her destiny forever. The man stood up and dressed, and at that moment she remembered his name, Philip Morris, the man from the novel she had been reading before she fell asleep. If this was indeed the case, then standing before her was the father-in-law of Layla, the main character of the book, Lila's Crown, which she held in her hands before falling asleep. Even in her sleep, the evil blood had a significant place, as if it were part of nature and fate itself. This feeling did not let go, as if it was deep in her blood and pulled all attention to itself, forcing her to feel its influence everywhere. It seemed that being the heroine would be much better than remaining in the role of the villain, because the main characters are always in the spotlight and receive sympathy, not condemnation. There was some bitterness and regret in this. Elena's eyes literally shone with joy, because for her, being a mother-in-law seemed much better, especially when she looked at Philip, feeling in it some special meaning and peace that was previously inaccessible. Philip made it clear that she should not imagine or hope for anything, because this night would not erase the signatures on the divorce papers and would not change anything in their legal relationship, despite all the feelings. Remembering the novel, Elena understood that this is exactly what he said. He was divorcing her only because that was his fate, and not because of any misunderstandings or feelings that could connect them. She remembered saying she'd only sign the divorce papers if he spent the night with her, as if it was a condition she could fulfill to make things fair. Elena noted that this night should be as special and significant as the wedding night, because for her it was not just a formal ritual, but something much more important and symbolic. She asked Philip if he remembered that it had to happen twice, like a repetition that gave their separation a special ritual and meaning that could not be ignored. Philip repeated again that Elena really didn't have a shred of conscience, and this was like a stab in her heart. But at the same time, it was an acknowledgement that she was strong and knew how to insist on her own way. He agreed and provided her with divorce papers, as if to emphasize that they both understood the inevitability of this step, despite the severity of the situation and emotions. Philip said that the final papers would be ready soon, and this fact brought the end of their common path closer, forcing them both to think about what awaits next. Since he didn't love her anymore, he definitely wouldn't kiss her. And this was a kind of last line that he wasn't going to cross, maintaining some distance. It was exactly that scene from the novel when Count Philip Morris and the villain Alina spend that very night, which seemed to sum up their relationship and prepare them for a new stage in life. There was one more time left, and Elena thought that it wasn't so bad, because everything happened in a dream, where you can allow yourself a lot without fear of the consequences. Honestly, it would be stupid to refuse such a handsome man, even if it was just a dream, because Philip's appearance and presence attracted and beckoned. But after a while, she opened her eyes and returned to reality, which turned out to be much more complex and demanding than any dreams. Elena realized that she didn't want to go to work and started looking for her phone to contact someone or just regain a sense of control over the situation. She began to feel everything around her, trying to understand where she was and what was happening, because there was a lot that was unknown and incomprehensible at that moment. Soon her fingers found Philip's back, and this touch caused a mixture of emotions and questions that did not give her peace. She didn't understand what was happening and why there was a man in her house, because everything was so unusual and alien to her. Everything around was different. Different clothes, different surroundings, and this increased her confusion and misunderstanding of the situation. Philip woke up and asked what was wrong. His voice was calm, but there was a slight anxiety in it, because he also understood that something went wrong. At that moment, Elena was not thinking clearly. She could not comprehend what was happening and how to react to the current situation. She kicked him, as if defending herself or trying to punish someone who, in her opinion, had attacked her without reason, not understanding his own actions. Having thrown Philip off the bed, she still did not understand why she was behaving this way and what was making her act so abruptly and impulsively. The girl wondered if he still asked why she was behaving this way, and she looked for even the slightest explanation for her behavior. She wanted to understand what she had done to him, and various options and doubts were spinning in her thoughts. Philip noticed that, of course, she wanted it herself, but the girl was sure that she had not even thought about it, and this caused her deep bewilderment. Philip said that she demanded and begged, but Elena believed that he simply went crazy from her behavior and words. He noted that she said it would all be just wonderful, but he was not convinced. At that moment, the maids burst into the room, asking what had happened to Madame and asking her to calm down, trying to intervene in the situation. Then Elena realized that what was happening was probably not a dream, and she would have to face reality. Philip was outraged and said that it was a complete mess, and the situation had gotten out of control. The girl wondered whether she should be afraid of his punishment, or perhaps he had already shown her mercy and spared her. The thought flashed through her mind that he might change his mind, but it seemed unlikely. Philip said that no ridiculous excuses would change his decision. He was determined to see the matter through to the end. The application has already been sent to court, and now, no matter what she does, the period of reflection before the divorce begins, which cannot be cancelled. Elena still didn't understand what exactly he meant by this period, and how long all this would continue. Philip added that this marriage had become a real hell for him, and he had had enough. He no longer wanted to continue. He expressed hope that the 100 days they were given to think about it would fly by quickly and without any unnecessary problems. The girl simply could not believe that everything was so serious. For her, it was a real shock and misunderstanding. He reminded her that the children would be back in a week, and she should not even dare to contact them or touch them without his permission. Philip was no longer going to turn a blind eye to what was happening, and intended to strictly monitor everything that was happening in their house. The maids said that they would wait for her outside, as if guarding peace and order, and did not intend to interfere in what was happening further. When Elena looked in the mirror, she was very surprised. She could not understand who the woman in her reflection was. Then she realized what it meant to be taken off her pedestal, and that she was now in the body of the villain she had previously feared. Now she knew for sure. She found herself inside the body of Elena, the very same villain whom she had previously judged from the outside. She needed to immediately check everything and understand how to live in this new reality so as not to make mistakes. She left the room, and the maids looked frightened, as if they themselves had not expected such a turn of events. Elena asked where the man who was talking to her had disappeared to, and who she was in this world now. She was surprised and frightened by the rough voice, which was not like the one she was used to. It was not her usual tone. At that moment, she remembered that the Count was in his office, and this finally convinced her that she had really gotten into the body of the villainess. The girl asked herself if she had really become Alina, Countess Morris, because she could not believe what had happened. She felt shock and bewilderment, realizing that her life was now connected with the fate of the very villain she had previously condemned. The maids immediately bowed their heads and apologized, explaining that since the divorce papers had already been sent to court, she was now officially the daughter of Duke Renoir. Alice could not understand why they were asking for forgiveness, because she had done nothing wrong, and if she really was a villain, then her behavior should be different so as not to arouse suspicion. It seemed to her that in such a situation, she had to behave appropriately so that no one would suspect her true intentions or character. So she told the maids that they were worthless creatures and should immediately return to their work without further ado. Even though she tried to speak like a true villain, her words were too cruel and could hurt the maids. This meant that she had nevertheless offended them with her harsh statements, even though she had not intended to. However, the maids were happy because they thought that the mistress could tear out all their hair for such impudence. Others were already ready to endure punishment, even the whip if necessary, but humbly. All doors in this house are open to her. Everything around is subject to her desire and will. It was unclear why she decided to become a villain, because it only complicates life. In any case, if she was really here, it was necessary to understand the situation as best as possible. After all, she didn't want to repeat the fate of the heroine of the novel and be killed. To begin with, it was worth establishing relationships with the maids, as they could become important allies. One of the maids announced that Madame's breakfast was ready and waiting for her. They invited her in and promised to bring breakfast right to the room so that everything would be convenient. When she tried what was served, she was simply amazed and completely delighted. This was not just a dish, but a real work of culinary art. Everything was so delicious that she could not hide her admiration. Everything was prepared exactly to her taste. She ate quickly, and the coffee that was served proved to be an excellent complement to breakfast. If she weren't a villain, life here could be quite good and comfortable. After all, nowhere else, and never again, will she have such luxury and comfort that are now available to her. She said she was going to take a walk to get away from it all and think. As soon as she uttered her wish, everything around her immediately began to prepare for her walk. They prepared a wardrobe for her so that she could choose an outfit that she liked. When she saw the blue dress, she immediately noticed it and liked it. She really liked the color and style, so she decided to take a closer look at the dress. And yet, Elena decided to put on clothes and went out into the most beautiful garden, where a peaceful atmosphere reigned and every bush was tended with love. In the garden, she noticed the golden figure of a gardener who was carefully tending the bushes and plants, as if he was protecting them like his own life. Elena came closer to him and looked closely, studying his face and expression, trying to understand what he was feeling. The man looked agitated, his eyes darted around, and soon he suddenly ran away without waiting for an answer or questions. Elena thought that perhaps the gardener was afraid of her, just as she had once been afraid of the unknown and new challenges. At that moment, a man approached her from behind and quietly asked if she wanted him to call someone else or help with something. Turning around, Elena saw in front of her a man with reddish hair that stood out brightly against the greenery of the garden. She asked who he was, as his appearance seemed unexpected and a little mysterious. The man replied that his name was Igor Madel, and he had been protecting Elena since she was 10 years old, always standing behind her back. Igor recalled that they had agreed not to joke like that anymore, which apparently concerned his sudden appearance. Elena was surprised, remembering that she could actually allow herself to make such jokes before. But now everything had changed. She admitted to herself that she was bored, and therefore behaved in this way in order to elicit at least some kind of reaction from those around her. Then she asked Igor why he kept following her, as if he couldn't leave her alone. Igor replied that it was his duty and obligation to be her faithful guardian and protect her from any danger. Elena remembered that she had a shadow knight who always remained nearby, invisible to others, but extremely important. When Elena incurred the wrath of King Marlborough and was sentenced to death, the knight fought Philip and died defending her. His name was mentioned only at the beginning of the story, Later, he was simply called Elena's shadow, like a ghost. Now she remembered his name well, and felt that she had at least one ally. This thought gave her hope and strength to continue fighting, despite the difficult trials. Elena sat in her bed, feeling a nagging pain in her back. She had not gotten up for a week, confined to her bed. The execution was scheduled for 3 years, and time dragged on painfully slowly, as if shortening hope. In her mind, she wondered what would happen if she tried to change the future and act differently than the novel prescribed. She probably got punished for torturing the main characters, and if the situation changes now, she might be able to survive. At the same time, no one will suffer from execution without a good reason, and everything will be fair. To begin with, Elena will try to improve her relationship with her children, because today they are returning from their honeymoon, and this is an important step for her to show her readiness for change and to start anew. If life in this place becomes more pleasant, the tension between them will decrease, and gradually the atmosphere will improve. Elena will try to be more gentle and attentive with the children in order to establish trust. She sat down at the table and looked carefully at the papers, trying to understand the situation and what steps needed to be taken next within the framework of the law and the family. According to the family law of the Kingdom of Cigarettes, a final divorce requires the filing of 2 applications, each of which has its own meaning and time limit. The first application is the divorce application itself, and the second is the application for confirmation of divorce, which is filed later and plays a decisive role in the process. A week ago, Count Philippe filed a divorce petition with the court, and from that day on, the couple must spend 100 days together, despite all the disagreements and grievances between them. The spouses are obliged to spend all these 100 days together, no matter how unpleasant it may be for them, in order to give them a chance to sort out their feelings and circumstances. A second petition for divorce may be filed with the court at any time during this waiting period, and this petition will be the final step. This second statement will be sealed and will only be unsealed by the judge on the last day of the deliberation period, making the process more intense and formal. It is at this point that the final decision will be made as to whether the divorce will take place or whether the couple will stay together, taking into account all the circumstances. If at least one of the spouses expresses a desire for a divorce, it will be approved, and if no one files an application or both withdraw it, then the divorce will be canceled. If the divorce is canceled, everything will remain the same, and the couple will continue to live together as before, despite all the difficulties. However, the issue of division of property during a divorce is decided by the head of the family, and this decision is often difficult and affects the future fate of each of the spouses. Aliona doesn't like this at all, because in the novel, the Count gives her a small 2-story house, which seems modest and insufficient compared to their past. Although the house looks quite large for ordinary people, compared to the Count's enormous fortune, it is just a drop in the ocean, and this greatly upsets Aliona. If the Countess did not decide to cancel the divorce and at least earned Philip's favor a little, then he would be able to give her much more than she expected. This could significantly improve her situation and change her plans for the future. But it is best to earn as much money as possible before the divorce, so that later she will feel more confident and not depend on someone's mercy. Money will give her freedom and the ability to control the situation, and only after that will it be possible to start living in grand style without worrying about unnecessary restrictions and circumstances that previously kept her in check. This approach seems more reasonable and safe. At that moment, Philip entered the room and immediately began to speak, wasting no time and showing his confidence and determination in matters that directly concerned him. He entered and asked what exactly the lady wanted, with what intention she approached him, trying to understand her position and goals in this matter. Elena replied that she insisted that he send the application to the court, since this was, in her opinion, the way to settle the divorce situation officially and quickly. The Count asked with confidence how firm she was in her decision, whether she really wanted to continue this business, because the consequences could be unpredictable. Mrs. Elena said that yes, she is completely sure and does not understand what could be wrong here, because anything can happen in life, and divorce is also a possible scenario. Philip was surprised and asked what exactly she meant when she spoke of such changes, trying to understand her inner motives and doubts. She explained that even if the divorce happened, he would still remain her protector and would take care of her no matter what happened between them. The Count confidently declared that, of course, this was so, and he swore before the Lord to protect Elena all his life, remaining her faithful knight and support. She was tired of all this talk and said that if it was true, then now he could leave, because from now on, she would cope with all the difficulties and problems herself. He said that he understood her and would definitely try to send this letter as soon as possible, because the matter was too important to put off until later. Now, besides Elena, she has another person who needs to be urgently saved and who also needs to be taken care of, because there is very little time left. She asked the maid how much time was left before she could pick up the children and take them with her to ensure their safety. The maid replied that there were about 2 hours left before everything would be ready, and it would be possible to begin implementing the planned plan. The lady noted that the maid was trying to behave as previously agreed, that they should be met at the main entrance, and everything was going according to plan. The maid confirmed this and pointed out that then it was time for the mistress to also get ready and be prepared for the important meeting and further events. The maid looked surprised, and the mistress did not understand why she was so afraid of her, because there had been no such signs of fear and anxiety before. At first, everything was awkward due to misunderstandings and miscommunications, but now, after a week, the mistress has gotten used to these circumstances and to the maid's behavior. Anyway, Elena will move out of here in 100 days, so there is no need to worry or fret about it, because this is just a temporary stage in her life that will soon end. When she was about to leave, everyone was shocked by how beautiful and transformed she had become. Like a completely different person, Elena had a truly bright and expressive appearance that attracted glances and made her stand out from the crowd, making her irresistible and memorable. When this life ended, that was when Elena planned to start a new one, more suitable and comfortable for her, full of new opportunities and hopes. She asked to remove from her head all the jewelry that now seemed unnecessary and in the way, in order to free herself from old constraints and feel lighter. The maids were amazed and could not understand what was going on, because for them, these decorations were a symbol of status and beauty, which they did not want to lose. They explained that the jewelry was heavy and uncomfortable, and that she would be better off without it, but they were still surprised by her decision to part with it so quickly. When the jewelry was removed, Elena felt relieved and was happy, saying that now she really felt better and more comfortable, as if she had lifted a heavy burden from herself. After that, she went out into the garden, intending to approach the main entrance and take the first step towards her new life, leaving behind everything old and unnecessary. There she unexpectedly met Count Philippe, her ex-husband, whose appearance evoked in her mixed feelings and memories. When the Count saw Elena, he was struck by her beauty and how much she had changed since they were together. Alyona was a very beautiful and graceful woman, and Philip married her when she was 18. Then she had no claims, even after learning about Marlborough's adopted son. But later, when Elena realized how talented and smart Marlborough was, her attitude began to change, and she began to feel anxious and jealous. She was afraid that her own son would not become heir to the earldom, despite all Philip's assurances, but Alyona did not trust, and became increasingly irritated with Marlborough. In fact, Marlborough was the king's secret son, something Philip could not tell her, and this secret knowledge only complicated the relationship between them. The Count swore to the king to keep this secret and could no longer continue to live with a woman like Elena, and she, in turn, could no longer stay near him. To be honest, he tolerated her only because of her pretty face, which seemed to him the only bright spot in their difficult relationship. Who else could endure such a cruel woman? The Count wondered, feeling that his patience was about to snap. He noticed that Elena was smiling, and immediately understood that she was up to something, as if she was making a new insidious plan. Today she looked especially beautiful, as if she was trying to make an impression or hide her intentions. The Count looked at her and became frightened, as if he had a presentiment of the approaching storm that she was about to unleash. He asked why she was looking at him so intently, feeling something ominous and dangerous in her gaze. The lady replied that she simply hit him as if it were a normal thing, without any remorse or regret. He was horrified by what she had just said, not believing that Elena could say such things so openly. She allowed herself to say such things in front of everyone, without fear of condemnation or consequences. This is a scoundrel who has now decided to ruin his reputation and destroy everything he has left. She said she just wanted to make sure he was okay, as if that was an excuse for her cruel actions. He knew that this scoundrel had fencing skills no worse than a knight's, which meant that her blows could be very painful and dangerous. Elena was also good at hand-to-hand combat, which made her an even more formidable opponent. She beat him, knowing exactly where to hit to cause the most pain, leaving him no chance to defend himself. She then asked for forgiveness and promised that it would not happen again, trying to smooth things over. The Count also noted that he wanted to ask her one thing, why she did it, but he did not dare to ask the question openly. Elena said that she was simply scared, trying to justify her behavior in front of him and herself. He asked again, still not understanding the reasons for her actions and completely bewildered. The lady admitted that she woke up and saw a man nearby, which was the reason for her fear and sharp reaction. He said that Elena herself asked for this, as if reminding her of her words, which she could not forget, despite what happened last night. The lady stood up, reminding herself that she had momentarily forgotten what had happened that night when everything had changed and left a mark on her memory. He was surprised and reminded her that it was she who insisted on this when she signed the papers, not allowing her to forget about the decision she had made. Elena replied that perhaps that was the case, but in a dream a lot is forgotten, and memories lose their sharpness in the memory. In the original, he was a reserved and closed character, so why is he now so curious and incomprehensible, asking questions that embarrassed her? He noticed that from what she said, she was pleased that this night had really been wonderful, despite everything. The lady was simply beside herself and asked why he was talking about this, thinking that she would have to hit him again for such words. The servants stood to the side, pretending not to hear or notice the tense atmosphere between them. The Duke shouted loudly that she really did not understand, because she herself had spoken about it and insisted on her words. The lady became angry and grabbed him by the jacket, not wanting to tolerate his impudent questions and comments any longer. Elena said that he was some kind of pervert, asking her questions that only irritated her and made her nervous. She reminded that she had already said that all this was unimportant and that there was no point in returning to the past, which was better forgotten. He was then embarrassed, unpleasantly realizing that she had enjoyed the night, but was now denying it and trying to hide the truth. It is obvious that the Golden One is lying to avoid a divorce, thinking that he will believe her words and give her another chance. Meanwhile, a carriage arrived, and they were delighted at the appearance of guests, because this meant new events and changes. It was Marlborough and his bride, who had arrived to meet with the family and resolve important matters. A very beautiful heroine, the daughter-in-law, personally rose up, believing that Elena had acted very badly, and this left an imprint on everyone. Even if Elena was a villain, how could she run away from such a beauty? She did not understand her actions and motivations. Her dear daughter-in-law will support her, so she greeted Layla warmly, expressing her support and respect. Layla immediately became frightened and asked what exactly her mother wanted, feeling the tension in her voice and look. The lady greeted Layla with a wide embrace, trying to hide her emotions and show friendliness. She hugged her daughter-in-law, and the girl was noticeably frightened, not understanding how to behave further in such a situation. Elena told her daughter-in-law to come into the house, inviting her to her place and promising a warm welcome. The lady noted that today Layla could rest peacefully, and they would definitely see each other later for tea. She also greeted Marlborough and said that since he had arrived, they should definitely say hello and talk. Marlborough replied that he had returned and greeted his mother and father with respect, expressing his devotion to the family. Elena looked at Count Philip, who was behaving like a real fool, as if he had forgotten about his role and responsibility, which caused her slight irritation and bewilderment at the same time. Philip told them to quickly enter the house, and Mrs. Elena nodded in response, confirming his words, showing that haste was really necessary and that she, too, could not wait to go inside. She suggested that we come in quickly, as if she had prepared black tea and pies in advance, which created an atmosphere of coziness and hospitality, despite the tension of the moment. Marlborough wondered what had happened to his stepmother during all this time, why she had changed so much, as if she had become a different woman, colder and harsher than before. Layla noticed that her mother-in-law had become even more terrible and cruel. Her changes in character and appearance were too noticeable, which caused her anxiety and bewilderment. Soon the butler, who has served them faithfully for many years, will have to leave this life. In the original story, he dies after a series of 3 accidents that no one can prevent. Elena, laughing, said that finally this annoying old man would die, and that very day she would get drunk to the point of unconsciousness and spend the night with Igor, which was an unexpected and daring statement. If Elena spoke about the future, it would seem strange and suspicious. She couldn't pretend not to know about the accidents that had already happened, because everything was too obvious. She turned to the butler, sitting down next to him, and asked if he was going to buy camel oil, and he was at a loss to understand how she could have found out about it, since no one had told her. Elena warned that there might be a robber on the road, and therefore the butler must be careful to avoid dangerous situations and not expose himself to unnecessary risk. He should have sent a messenger or taken a bodyguard with him to ensure that security was at the highest level, especially if he had an important journey or meeting ahead of him. Judging by the expression on Elena's face, there might be a collision with a horse, so the butler had to be especially attentive and careful during the journey. One had to be especially careful when meeting strangers at a tavern, because dangerous people and unwanted guests who could cause harm often hid there. The butler said he understood her warnings and bowed, showing his respect and willingness to do whatever she said, even if it seemed a little strange. He didn't believe it completely, but he himself wouldn't have believed it if he had been in her place. Such warnings sounded as if from another world, full of secrets and dangers. After this, Elena heard a conversation about the Renoir Trading Company and was surprised that this company had the same name as she had before marriage, which aroused her curiosity and bewilderment. The Duke believed that this company belonged to her brother, but the girl was surprised because she did not know about it, and this news took her by surprise. She was amazed that she had a brother at all, and asked again, not believing her ears, because it completely changed her idea of her family and past. The gentleman replied that if she hated him so much, then she could consider that she did not have this brother, as if trying to calm her indignation and doubts while keeping the secret. Elena also noticed a large pile of gifts and thought that they were all intended for her, which caused her slight surprise and interest. There were rumors in Romania that the heroes had prepared a special gift for Elena and Philip in advance, carefully choosing each item based on their tastes and preferences. However, Elena found a reason to find fault, expressing all her dissatisfaction and criticizing little things, as if trying to hide her true feelings behind a mask of irritation. But no one should have worried, because she was the mother-in-law and stood on the side of the newlyweds, supporting them and trying to maintain peace in the family. When she went out with a gift, she had to try to show maximum joy, so as not to offend anyone, and maintain a good mood at the party. Layla expressed hope that the gift would please both of them, wishing that it would bring joy and leave pleasant memories for everyone present. The lady began to unwrap the package and was simply delighted when she saw inside an elegant and graceful dress that immediately caught her attention. There was no need to pretend. Her delight burst forth with her own eyes, and she said that it was a very soft and beautiful negligee, which immediately won her sympathy. She hugged the gift to herself and was genuinely delighted, feeling the warmth and care put into this present, which became special for her. The Duke was noticeably embarrassed, not knowing how to properly react to this unexpected scene of joy and sincere emotions that Elena showed. His adopted son also looked confused as he looked at his stepmother, not understanding why she was so touched and why everyone was taking it so seriously. Vireski carefully asked if everything was all right with the young master and the count, showing concern and trying to understand if there were any problems that could interfere with the celebration. The lady asked where Layla got such an elegant robe and expressed her gratitude, saying that she would wear it with great pleasure and appreciate such a gift. Layla replied that she was very pleased that her mother liked the robe, and this inspired her even more to care and pay attention to the family in the future. Elena added that Layla worked hard, so now she needs to rest and feel at home in order to regain her strength and maintain a good mood. Layla was simply shocked. Never before had her mother-in-law treated her so warmly and caringly, and this caused her deep emotions and even surprise. The Duke and his son were also in shock, not knowing how to react to this, because such a manifestation of warm feelings from an unexpected side came as a complete surprise to them. Elena demanded that Layla immediately tell her if Marlborough suddenly upset her, because she wanted to be aware of what was happening and not allow any resentment or misunderstandings between them. Elena stated with cold confidence that if she was truly upset, she would personally deal with it and would not hesitate to kill the one who dared to hurt her. After this scene, Count Philippe Maurice decided to turn his attention and see what the gift was, which he had prepared in advance with a certain thought. The butler politely apologized for the slight delay and clarified that he had also prepared something special, a gift, handed over to him on behalf of the master. Inside was a robe, quite cozy, and the gentleman, looking at it, thanked it, saying that he really liked the thing, although he expressed himself briefly. But then Philip added that he had news. A week earlier, the divorce papers had not been signed, which created an extremely awkward situation. The children, upon hearing this, were completely confused and literally paralyzed, because they could not even imagine such a turn of events. The gentleman clarified that when the period allotted for reflection ends, formal actions will begin, and then the decision should be final. Elena, as he said, will have to leave this house, but it is not a fact that she will do this immediately after the end of the term, so it is better not to put on robes for now. He also instructed the butler to carefully arrange the robes in the closet and ensure that they were properly cared for, as if they were expensive items. Elena turned to the Duke with the question, why is he even raising this topic, and why did he decide to take away even her robe if they were not yet divorced? The Duke stated that it would be more correct this way, but Elena insisted that she would still wear the robe if it was already in her possession. He explained that the divorce process would not be cancelled, and he was not going to wear a robe, even though he had previously had a different opinion. Then, Elena asked ironically who said that she wanted to cancel the divorce, and added that he was rejoicing too early. She added that there was no need to feel joy prematurely. If he didn't want to wear the robe, then let him give it to her, and the matter would be closed. Philip said that he bought the robe to wear with her, but now, as he himself admitted, this will not happen, and the meaning in it has been lost. After which he clarified that, in fact, she was also rejoicing in vain, because their relationship would not return to its previous level anyway, and robes would not help. Elena reacted to this rather dryly, did not support the conversation in any way, and simply remained silent in response, showing neither irritation nor interest. Philip said that he liked the robe too, but if he couldn't share it with his mistress, he would have to put it away so that it wouldn't remind him of the past. Then Marlborough intervened and said that the dressing gowns had been bought in duplicate, so it would be quite possible to do without the dressing gown intended for the Count. Philip reminded that in 100 days, Elena would have to leave this house, as they had agreed, and everything must be done according to the law. After the divorce, as he noted, Elena will again receive the status of the Duke's daughter, so she must be provided with appropriate housing worthy of her position. He stressed that no one should even think about giving her a small 2-story house, with cheap wallpaper and furniture below any criticism. Then the Count asked again whether he had said a word about any compensation, because he had apparently not said anything like that at all. Elena replied that she was not asserting this at all, but simply assumed that the Count might act in a similar manner, knowing his tendency to make drastic decisions. Elena decided that she would go and rest. She really needed some rest, and the others could use it too. Everyone looked tired and worn out from the day. Elena had no intention of interfering or disturbing the newlyweds, and especially did not intend to show up in their bedroom in the middle of the night. They should have their own personal life. Instead, Elena decided to just take a short walk, to get some air, think, and clear her head. Her thoughts had been too confusing lately. It was a pity that this garden was not a photo zone at all, she thought. The beauty around was fabulous, and she wanted to capture this place, but there was no camera or phone here. It would have been nice to have her picture taken like this. In her outfit, she looked like a real lady, almost like a heroine from an old magazine cover. Elena sighed softly and slowly turned her head, enjoying the quiet rustling of leaves and the barely perceptible scent of flowers that permeated the air. Igor was behind her. Alyona noticed him and asked what had happened, because he had approached with some unusual expression on his face. Igor quietly apologized, and Elena, noticing his slight smile, asked what made him so happy. He looked as if he was trying to hold back his laughter. He said it was simple. She looked happy, and that amused him, because such a mood was rare here. Now Igor was truly happy, because her good mood seemed to have been transmitted to him, filling the day with warm light. Alyona was not going to let such a kind and loyal person as Igor die. She had already mentally decided that she would protect him at any cost. Today, Layla was going to have a tea party, and Elena knew that this event would be important, even though it was held informally and in a small circle. Elena needed to make a good impression on Layla and her friends, especially if they were all going to gather together in the garden. She decided to look for a place where the tea party would take place. Igor noted that perhaps the lady was looking for something and came up to help. Elena remembered what Layla had mentioned. The place would be strewn with pink flowers. She looked around, but Layla wasn't there. Apparently this wasn't the place. Igor said that he now understood why the maids behaved strangely and fell silent when he appeared. They probably knew, but hid it. He himself didn't know anything either. Alyona realized that such things could really be hidden even from the closest servants and shadows. She was not going to give up and firmly asked Igor where he thought they could have this tea party. Maybe he had some ideas. Igor cautiously suggested that it would most likely be in the backyard, where it was quieter and more secluded, a place suitable for a simple tea party. Alyona asked again, and he clarified. The young lady's friends were commoners, which meant they would choose the most modest place, far from the palace noise. He added that if you were going to have tea, then most likely in the gazebo by the lake. It's spacious, beautiful, and no one will disturb you. Alyona was surprised. Why didn't anyone tell her? She told Igor to take her there, not wanting to wander blindly around the estate any longer. The road to the lake was not short, and Alyona thought about taking a carriage, or at least a horse. In the original, her heroine made a real scandal in such a situation, so Elena decided that she would act as carefully as possible. She would slowly approach the maids and calmly, with a polite smile, tell them to have a good time together. She wanted to avoid unnecessary noise, so she was going to say it without unnecessary tension, as if she was casually passing by and simply wished them a nice day. Igor noted that it was better not to use either horses or a carriage, because the sudden clatter of hooves could frighten the maids and arouse suspicion ahead of time. For this reason, they decided to walk, slowly, as if they were just going for a walk, so that no one would guess their real intentions. Soon Igor noticed the maids, immediately quickened his pace, and, having almost caught up with them, asked where they were heading in such a hurry, as if he had noticed them by accident. The maids were frightened, hesitated, not knowing what to answer, and Elena, taking advantage of this, asked what exactly they were carrying in the baskets, trying to speak softly. They muttered that it was nothing special, nonsense, but Elena calmly told them not to open the baskets, pretending that it didn't matter to her at all. However, the maid's father suddenly opened one of the baskets, and Alyona immediately noticed that there were various treats, exquisite sweets, and buns there. She guessed that this food was intended for tea with Layla, because only for a daughter-in-law could they so carefully prepare such delicacies. The maid nodded in surprise, and admitted that she had indeed been bringing treats to Layla, and still could not understand how her mistress could have known this at all. They immediately apologized, and Elena, without showing irritation, asked that the basket be given to her. She would supposedly deliver it to its destination herself. The maids were amazed, and Elena added that they shouldn't worry. She would calmly take the basket herself and personally hand over the treats to her daughter-in-law. The maids tried to object, saying that the basket was very heavy, but Elena calmly replied that it didn't matter, because Igor was always next to her. After a short pause, they all went together with the basket to Layla, and at that moment, she heard movement at the entrance. Igor asked whether to announce his arrival. Elena said that the meeting was completely informal, and that was why they would simply go together, without any ceremony, so as not to attract unnecessary attention to themselves and not to arrange formalities. She thought about what words she would say to these girls, how she would start the conversation, and what would make the best impression out of everything she said. The first thing that came to her mind was to say that she really enjoyed meeting them and that she was genuinely glad that the girls were having a good time here. The second point she decided to say was that she brought the cake and the golden pie with her, and that they should definitely take care of Layla, because she still felt insecure. This is pretty much how it should go, and it's probably enough to start with to ease the tension and not seem too pushy or fake. At some point, Elena heard someone nearby start talking about her mother, and the words she caught made her wary. Then she gently but firmly asked Igor to speak more quietly, so as not to attract unnecessary attention to himself and not to interrupt others. Elena moved closer to the group of girls, hoping to overhear what exactly they were talking about, to understand whether they were discussing her. As far as she remembered, in the original, those same friends were commoners, without any noble titles or high origins, although it is possible that they were simply the children of rich merchants, because among the girls of the aristocracy, no one entered the house of Count Maurice because of her reputation. They discussed Layla and said that she needed to pull herself together, because if she continued to worry like this, she simply wouldn't be able to cope. The Countess, in their opinion, was terrible. Layla disagreed with her friends and tried to persuade them not to say that, because she asked for it, and if they knew her mother-in-law better, they would understand how kind she was. But the girls were adamant and insisted that all the rumors about her mother-in-law had long been known, and Layla responded by claiming that she treated her well, especially after returning from her honeymoon. Elena behaved disgustingly, as befits a villain, but despite this, Layla continued to defend her, as if there really was something good in her. This touched Elena, and she decided that she really should be kinder to Layla, because she deserved much more than she got. However, the girl's friends were distrustful of her words, and believed that Layla was simply defending her mother-in-law out of shame or habit. Layla insisted that she had not yet earned her mother-in-law's approval, and hoped that she would be able to do so in the future. However, she added, soon there would be nothing to worry about. Divorce was already on the horizon, and all this would soon be over. One of the girls asked, laughing, how Layla's first wedding night had gone, as if hoping to hear something spicy. Hearing this question, Layla visibly blushed and hesitated, embarrassed, and not knowing what to answer at all. All the girls immediately burst out laughing when they saw her reaction and realized that they had caught their friend off guard. They continued to playfully interrogate her, asking increasingly frank questions about what exactly was going on in her bed. Layla couldn't figure out how to tell it out loud because they didn't realize how important it was to her, even though she was willing to share it with them honestly. The girls noticed that she had no friends except them, because due to her noble origin and evil blood, she was avoided, and she remained isolated among high society. Elena sincerely did not understand how it was possible to tease such a kind girl, and felt a flash of irritation, observing the unfair treatment towards her. The girls noticed that she had to treat them well to maintain their friendship, and asked if they could keep the dresses. Aliona replied that it was a gift. They added that if she were to get new things in the future, she would not be able to wear them anyway with her current health, so it would be better if she gave the jewelry to them. Then they concluded that for Elena, jewelry was more valuable than friendship, and she should reconsider her priorities if she really wanted to be closer to them. The girl immediately began to justify herself, assuring that this was not so. They, as if not hearing, began to ask her about the arrival of some important person. The lady, trying to divert attention, said that the cake would be brought soon, hoping to calm the situation and regain control of the situation. They noted that if you are going to have a reception, you need to prepare everything in advance, otherwise it will look disrespectful to the guests, even if it is just a tea party. Layla, despite everything, still decided to have a small tea party with her friends here, hoping to spend time with them in a warm and calm atmosphere. The lady emerged from the thick bushes and approached the girls, watching their conversation, not hiding her curiosity and desire to intervene. She said she was glad to see how much fun they were having, trying to maintain a cozy atmosphere despite her sudden appearance. The girls were scared to the point of trembling, and the lady, noticing this, admitted that she had missed the moment a little and had not had time to prepare for their visit in advance. Everyone immediately remained in place and bowed to the lady as a sign of respect, since her position required her to observe strict forms of decency. Layla also paid her respects to the lady, greeting her with a restrained gesture, wanting to show that she appreciated her presence and did not hold a grudge. Elena asked one of the girls to step aside because she decided to bring the cake and pie herself instead of the maids, as if demonstrating her personal participation in the celebration. Initially, she just wanted to put the chocolate cake and pie on the table to make a formal statement about her friendship with Layla, showing herself to be a polite hostess. But later, her decision changed. It turned out to be easier for her to play the role of a villain than to pretend that she sincerely wanted to get closer to them. She screamed at the girls, accusing them of being rude and humiliating Layla, adding that she could not understand how they dared to do such a thing to her daughter-in-law. In a fit of rage, she began throwing pieces of cake at them, and they, in a panic, begged her for forgiveness, covering their faces with their hands. The girls repeated that they were wrong, repented of their behavior, and tearfully asked the lady for mercy and understanding. Elena stated that she tried to be friendly with them, but they turned out to be ordinary evil people, unworthy of trust. In response, the girls just laughed, throwing the accusation in her face that she, supposedly, saw no limits to her madness. However, after this, they began to beg for mercy, begging the Countess not to be angry, hoping that they could avoid a worse outcome. The lady coldly said that Layla did not need friends like them, and angrily threw a basket of treats in their direction. Just as she was about to throw another object, someone suddenly grabbed her by the waist, stopping her movement. Turning her head, she almost told Igor to let her go, but stopped short, realizing that it was not him at all. The man firmly said that these girls needed to be taught an even more severe lesson, otherwise they would never understand their mistakes. He also calmly but confidently asked the lady to restrain her emotions and not lose her dignity in front of the servants. And only then, looking more closely, she saw that Philip himself was standing in front of her, watching everything that was happening. He picked her up in his arms, confidently declaring that he had seen everything on the way here, and now knew exactly who was right and who was wrong. He raised himself to look over the wall and see what was happening. He noticed how Aliona was behaving unexpectedly decisively, not letting up her pressure for a second, as if she was losing patience. Elena expressed a desire to undergo a test so that the master would let her go, but the Count only calmly ordered the maids to clean up the place without adding a word. Layla's friends were amazed. They froze in place, stunned by Elena's behavior and the entire uncontrollable scene that played out right before their eyes. The Count, holding back his irritation, said that he regretted ruining the tea party and reluctantly asked for forgiveness, as if out of habit and not from the heart. Elena didn't see the point in this, because it was the guests who allowed themselves to be rude. Why then justify herself if it wasn't her fault? She said that the girls should consider themselves lucky that everything had worked out, and told them to get out of here without delay. The Count called for her to remain calm, but Elena shouted after them in response, telling them to stay away from Layla and not even dare to speak to her. Otherwise, she would deal with them. The Duke carefully carried Elena inside, where he finally lowered her to the floor, as if hoping that this would make her cool down a little. She said that she had indeed tried to be kind to her future daughter-in-law, but it did not seem to have the desired effect. He replied that after all the mess she had made at the reception, she had no right to make excuses or complain about the consequences. Elena tried to explain that the whole scene was not her idea. It didn't happen by her will. The Duke sternly ordered her to rest and stop making scenes, as her behavior no longer pleased anyone. She turned to Philip, begging him to listen to her, because only then could he find out what had really happened. But he interrupted her, declaring that he would figure out what was happening himself, without needing her versions or justifications. After these words, he slammed the door without turning around and left her room with cold determination. A second later, she heard the distinctive click of the bolts, and her heart sank with understanding. Running sharply to the door, she pulled the handle and, having convinced herself of the worst, realized that she had indeed been locked in. Elena became furious, pounded her fists on the door, and asked tearfully why he had locked her, why he had acted so meanly without explaining anything in advance. Philip calmly said that it was for the safety of the maids while he was away, and asked her to just be patient for a little while and not make a scene. Elena did not understand who could threaten the maids, but the Count reminded her that she had previously behaved aggressively and assured her that he would return soon and that she should calm down. She angrily called him a fool and brainless, said that he didn't even understand how he felt about her, and that her feelings apparently didn't matter to him. When he finally returned after some time, Elena admitted that her friends had indeed behaved in a bad way, and this could not be justified. The Count noted that everyone had their own truth. Friends claimed that Elena appeared unexpectedly and immediately began to make scenes for no reason. Then the lady asked what exactly Layla had said, and he replied that she had at least tried to apologize and admitted that her friends had been overly harsh. Elena replied that she still continues to protect them, because being too soft towards those who offend does not lead to anything good. The Count noticed that Layla had nevertheless promised to resolve the situation and personally talk to her friends so that they would apologize to Elena. The lady nodded and said that this was right, but now she should find new, sincere friends on whom she could truly rely. Then the Count asked if she had already forgotten everything or was simply giving them a second chance to see for herself whether it was worth forgiving. The lady did not understand what exactly he was talking about when he said that it was she who had driven out all of Layla's noble friends. It sounded unexpected and offensive to her. She could not believe such an accusation. It was sheer impudence to accuse her without any evidence and then not apologize. He acted as if he could say whatever he wanted, without regard for the feelings of others, but she didn't care anymore. She decided to leave this situation behind, and now start looking for a new place to live for herself, because there was no point in staying here. The very next day, she went with Igor to inspect the house that Philip had prepared for her. It was an attempt to find at least some solution to this difficult situation. Of the 10 proposed options, they first looked at 9 and then went to inspect the last one, a house of the same color that Aliona had already received according to the plot of the novel Romaine's Circus. The street where this house was located was littered with garbage, which immediately created an unpleasant impression and spoke of the neglect of the area. The road was very narrow, the carriage could not pass, so they had to walk, which further emphasized the inconvenience and unsightliness of the place. Philip seriously suggested this particular area as a possible place of residence for his ex-wife, which caused surprise and bewilderment in Aliona. At that moment, Philip looked not at all handsome. After such a proposal, he lost all his former charm and attractiveness in her eyes. It was more important for him to hurry and secure his assets than to think about helping or supporting Elena, at least a little, during this difficult period. He clearly didn't want to leave her in a better position. It was much easier for him to force her out of her comfortable life and leave her to her fate before the divorce. It seemed like he was even trying to provoke a conflict, to force her to accept worse conditions and not create any problems for him. It may be possible to try to run away or fight these men who look like homeless people and are clearly hostile, but it will not be easy. The street was so narrow that it was practically impossible to simply escape. The space was compressed, leaving no room to maneuver. In the end, the only option left was to fight. There was no other way out, and she had to prepare for a collision. Now she was next to Igor, and this gave her some sense of confidence and relief in the impending danger. The men threw a bottle in her direction. She immediately turned around and looked at them carefully, trying to understand their intentions. They shouted something incomprehensible, as if warning her that she should run away, but the meaning of their words remained a mystery. She could not understand at all what exactly they wanted to convey and why they so persistently advised her to leave. These people tried to stay away from them, avoided them, but the reasons for this behavior were unknown to her. Igor noted that it was enough to lie on the ground, and if they did not leave, they could try to grab these scoundrels and punish them for their insolence. However, Mrs. Maurice said that it was not worth doing this, because then everyone would recognize her. But Igor reminded that she was the mistress of these lands, and they would certainly know them. At that moment, she realized that these men were running away from her out of fear, and not just like that. Their reaction was caused by exactly that. But she could not understand what she had done that fear and apprehension reigned around her. Suddenly, someone addressed her with a request, and the voice was childish, full of need and anxiety. The children said they were hungry and asked for at least a small piece of bread, turning to her with hope and prayer. They asked for alms too persistently, as if their need was extremely acute, and they wanted the lady to help them. But the children's mother grabbed them by the hands and said that Countess Maurice was in front of them, so they should behave more quietly and carefully. The boy cried and said that he was hungry. His voice was thin and weak, as if he had not eaten for a long time, and dreamed of at least a piece of food to at least slightly satisfy his hunger. The mother explained that the child had not eaten since yesterday, and that was why she asked for forgiveness for him asking for food, fearing to displease Aliona. The boy also asked for forgiveness. Although the children were afraid of Elena, she seemed so scary and stern that they did not even dare to look her in the eyes. It was better to pretend that she didn't notice them. That was how she could help them, leaving them alone, without drawing unnecessary attention to them. She walked further, tossed them a coin, and quietly told them to leave while no one was looking, hoping that this small gesture would help them survive. Elena explained that this was to feed the child, to at least satisfy his hunger a little and give him hope for the best. The woman was shocked by this unexpected display of kindness and fell to her knees to thank the lady for her mercy. After that, she immediately ran away, because the area they were in was terrible and dangerous. She didn't want to go back there. Elena looked at Igor and noticed that he was agitated. Something was clearly bothering him, and it was noticeable on his face. She asked what was wrong, trying to understand the reason for his anxiety, although she knew that he rarely showed emotions. He said that it was the first time he had seen the lady give something to the poor, and it was unexpected and unusual for him. Elena reacted too emotionally, and it was noticeable. She rarely showed such feelings in public. Igor said that she simply got them out of sight in the fastest possible way, but then he wondered if he really should have beaten them up and driven them away. But then he clarified that, of course, he didn't mean it for them personally, but was talking about other men who behaved worse. Everything became clear. Igor is not a villain. He was simply following Elena's orders and did not wish harm to anyone. He was slandered and eventually died along with Elena, leaving behind a sad story. She told him to lead her on without delay, and they continued on their way, moving forward without looking back. Igor confirmed that they should move forward without being distracted by the past, because something new was waiting ahead. When she entered the house, she thought that all her dresses would not fit here. There was too little space for such wealth. She realized that, most likely, Elena had to sell them, even though she didn't like it. But circumstances forced her to make this decision. I really wanted to send the lady here so that she could feel what it was like to live in such conditions. Elena noted that it seemed that this would be her fate. She would be evicted here, as if being driven out of her previous life. Igor did not understand where he found this hut, because such a place seemed forgotten and lost among empty lands. The lady noted that in the worst case, he would settle on the first floor, and she on the second, but she doubted that she herself would not move here if she received this house. Igor objected that she couldn't live here, but the lady said that if the house was hers, she would stay here. Otherwise, she simply had nowhere to go. He admitted that he was shocked by her decision to get a divorce, and she reminded him that he had seen the documents and did not understand why he was not trying to prevent the divorce. He replied that family is not the most important thing for him, but he still wants her to be happy and supports her choice. Elena noted that she seemed happy to him during their stay at the estate, and this was not an illusion. Igor agreed that she really did look happy then, and it was noticeable to everyone. He asked if she had told him about her plans, because if the divorce was true, it would be worth thinking about moving. Igor asked the lady whether she should change her mind and refuse the divorce for the sake of her family. The lady replied that the documents had been submitted, which meant that everything had been decided. She had no regrets, and he should not worry about the house where she would soon be gone. She said he could come back, and he looked at his mistress with a question in his eyes. In the future, their new home should be in the very center of the city, which opens up new opportunities. He remembered that he had once said that he was not going to change jobs, despite all the changes. Igor noted that if they lived together, then this house would be theirs, and the lady agreed with this. At that moment, she saw a group of masked people nearby and immediately paid attention to them. She remembered a conversation with the butler, where she said that trying to protect her from the robbers in blue masks was pointless. It was better to either send them away or take a real bodyguard for protection. Then, he said that he had heard something about it. Now she understood that today, on this holy day, they were going to follow him, and this was not an accident, but an important event. She decided to come to Igor and said that he probably knew where Mrs. Hida's boutique was, because he often mentioned this place and could give the necessary information. Igor replied that the boutique was located a little outside the city. He also noticed that the butler seemed to be planning to go there today, perhaps on business or a meeting. He assumed that the butler had an appointment for around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that he would probably come to the meeting in person, although Igor himself did not know the details for sure. The lady suggested having lunch first, and then going there at 4 o'clock, so as not to be late for the meeting and to have time to organize everything on time. That same day, at exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they were already on the road and preparing for the meeting, expecting that everything would go according to plan, and without any unpleasant surprises. Upon arrival, they stood at the entrance, looking around carefully, prepared for any developments in order to react in time to a possible threat. She asked Igor what time it was to be sure that time was not pressing and they would not be late for their scheduled meeting. Igor replied that it was now about 4 o'clock, and the lady asked him to inform them that they needed to go to the boutique immediately, without delay, so as not to waste time. He assured them that he would organize everything now, after which they quickly left, realizing that every minute counted and the success of their plan depended on the accuracy of their actions. After a while, she saw these masked men, exactly the ones she was afraid of. Their appearance caused alarm and made her tense. She shouted loudly for the carriage to stop, realizing that the situation could turn dangerous and that she needed to act quickly and decisively. Igor could not understand why everything happened so suddenly and abruptly, as if the situation had gotten out of control at the most unexpected moment. The lady hit him sharply, reminding him that she had already warned him to stop and demanded that he obey without objection. He tried to stop the horse abruptly, but the animal did not obey and continued to move, as if sensing the tension of what was happening. On the move, the lady jumped out of the carriage, without losing a second, and rushed in the direction that seemed most important to her. Igor did not understand why she ran there, because the situation seemed too confusing and unexpected to him. Where the lady ran, a man was crowded, and it seemed that things were taking a dangerous turn. As she approached, she saw that among those who were crushing the man was the butler, the very one everyone knew. Igor was a fool, because he should have believed the words of the lady and not doubted her decisions and actions. The lady addressed the attackers with determination and force, forcing them to step aside and stop their actions. The men were in complete shock and did not understand who this woman was, who so confidently and powerfully intervened in what was happening. The butler could not explain how the lady had ended up here and why she was interfering in this scene. She asked him why he didn't take security with him if he knew the situation could get out of control. The butler became embarrassed, and one of the men asked her who she was and why she was interfering. The lady introduced herself as Countess Maurice, reminding of her high status and influence in this society. The men were ordered to seize her, but their attempts were in vain. She was too fast and agile. With the help of her umbrella, she quickly dealt with the attackers, showing amazing skill and strength. Her actions were a little harsh, but in the current situation, it seemed completely justified and normal. She explained that she did not mean to cause harm and expressed hope that the man would survive the incident. At such moments, you need to remain strong and determined, and that's when Igor burst into the situation, ready to help. He asked the lady to step aside and asked if they could deal with the knights without her intervention. Igor assured them that they could approach as much as they wanted, because he would quickly deal with everyone and protect them. The lady assigned Igor to work on the left side, dividing the duties and counting on his strength and dexterity. With the help of the ball, he was able to deal with the attackers, eliminating everyone who tried to get closer. But the lady did not leave him alone, and also knocked out several people herself, helping in the fight. Igor was shocked to see the mastery of the lady and the grace and strength with which she dealt with her enemies. The lady told him not to get distracted and to deal with these people first, without allowing himself a second of weakness. She looked incredibly chic as she fought them, as if dancing in the whirlwind of danger and chaos around her. Elena was weak. The blows she took were hard for her, but despite the pain, She tried to remain resilient and not show weakness in front of her enemies. At this point, the man grabbed the butler and demanded that he hand over all his things without delay, so that no one would be left with resources that could be useful. Everyone started running away quickly, and Elena caught up with them near Gazprom, trying to keep up despite the fatigue and efforts of her pursuers. She suddenly hit the man who was nearby, and immediately pulled the butler closer to her, trying to protect and control the situation. She grabbed his arm and held the butler tightly, literally dragging him along with her so that he could not run away and leave them in danger. He asked for forgiveness, explaining that it was not worth exposing himself to danger over some trifle. The oil could be bought again, and life was more valuable than anything. The butler admitted that he had little money, and that was why he was so worried, trying to make amends and avoid conflicts with others. The man behind them ran after them, shouting that they needed to immediately kill the man who had interfered with their plans and become an obstacle. However, she grabbed the stone and ordered the butler to run, promising that she would deal with the threat herself and not let them catch up with them. The butler tried to convince her that the lady should also leave with him, believing that it would be safer for everyone. But at that moment, she threw a stone straight at the head of one of the bandits, causing him to fall and slowing the enemy's advance. She told the butler that he must run and not stop under any circumstances in order to save his life and not give them a chance to catch up. But the butler insisted that the lady also leave the place of danger, fearing that she might suffer along with him. The men were very angry with her for such actions, but she was stronger and was able to respond with a blow, not giving them a chance to gain the upper hand. During the fight, she wrestled a knife from the hands of one of her attackers, using the weapon to defend herself and suppress her enemies. The enemies decided that they had to kill this woman, but Igor shouted loudly for the lady to run and not put herself at risk. However, the lady said that Igor could die fighting alone, and she would not allow this to happen, intending to help him. She proved her strength by dispersing the enemies much better than Igor himself, not giving them the slightest chance of winning this fight. It was a real achievement, an Olympic medal that looked truly valuable and significant, as a sign of long efforts and great victories. She had already dealt with all the difficulties, and now she could finally allow herself to breathe a sigh of relief, to feel lightness in her soul. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to quick steps. Someone was approaching them with great speed and force, as if the running stream was unstoppable. When she turned around, she immediately realized that there were too many of them to handle without consequences. It was obvious and alarming. Shock overcame her when, among all the figures, she saw the Duke's knights, serious and menacing, ready to carry out an order without question. Behind them walked confidently the Duke himself, a man whose presence always inspired fear and respect. His power was unquestionable and harsh. He immediately gave the order. Everyone who was here must be immediately seized, leaving no one free and without control. The men tried to escape, fighting and struggling, but after being beaten, they were abandoned as if they were of no value to the guards. The knights warned that if anyone tried to move from the spot, they would be killed immediately, leaving no chance of escape at all. Almost everyone was caught, and then the Count, who was in control of the situation, asked if everything was all right with the lady, whose safety was unexpectedly important to him. She was surprised by such attention to herself, because before he had never shown the slightest concern or interest in her condition. With a slight sigh, she made it clear that everything was fine and nothing terrible had happened, not wanting to show weakness or anxiety. Before, it seemed like he didn't care about her, but now this unexpected concern made her think about his true feelings. Soon she heard one of the knights calling out to a point, possibly one of the men, and the situation became increasingly tense. This knight suddenly snatched an umbrella from one of the men, as if using it as a tool for punishment, which looked threatening. It seemed that the actions were not just cruel, but also painful, and this was evident in the reaction of the injured man. Igor rushed to the lady to make sure that she was okay, showing genuine concern for her condition. She assured him that she felt completely well, not wanting to worry those around her with her condition or show weakness. At the same time, her gaze caught something strange and inexplicable, which made her wary and think about the further development of events. The Count approached the butler to get an answer to a question that had been bothering him for a long time. He looked at the man carefully, waiting for explanations and news. It turned out that what the butler was holding in his hands was a letter, an important document that could change a lot in the fate of the lady and the Count himself. The Count expressed his gratitude to the butler for his help and attentive attitude to the matter, realizing that without his participation, much would have remained unknown. The butler modestly replied that everything was done thanks to the help and support of the lady, without whom he would not have coped with the task. Then the lady approached the Count, and the butler confessed that he owed her a great deal in his life, which caused slight surprise among everyone. The Count thought for a moment, noting that this was too different from the usual procedure, and began to wonder whether this might cause problems or misunderstandings. He asked if he was interested to know whether the lady was familiar with these documents or if they were new to her as well, trying to understand the situation more deeply. The lady asked what exactly he meant and wondered if he meant to say that he suspected her of something illegal or secretive. The Count hastened to explain that he had neither said nor meant anything of the sort, trying to smooth over the tension and misunderstanding between them. However, the lady understood everything herself and stated that he still suspected her, after which she began to swear loudly, not hiding her emotions and irritation. He began to argue that he thought differently. If she were with them, there would be no point in revealing such information in advance, because then everything would be simpler and clearer for everyone. In any case, the unusual kick caused genuine admiration among everyone who saw it, because the power and precision of the movement impressed even the most skeptical observers. Of course, this was not surprising, because she always knew how to control her body so that such tricks were performed easily and with great skill. He noticed that everything that was happening resembled red and white roses mixing and swaying in the wind, creating a delicate and unusual pattern before his eyes. At the same time, the Count felt embarrassed, remembering how she used to be harsh at times and even beat them, and these memories left an unpleasant aftertaste in his soul. He stared at her raised posture, which made her feel embarrassed, as if she realized that all her movements were now on display. She said that in that case she would go first, deciding to take the initiative and not leave anyone waiting or doubting her decision. He tried to stop her, saying that it was better to wait, but she calmly walked away, ignoring his words and showing firmness in her intention. He noticed that her legs were shaking, which was visible even to the untrained eye and indicated internal unrest or weakness. Igor said that in such a situation, she definitely needed to go to the hospital, because health and safety were more important than anything else. She agreed and said that it really seemed worth going, since the situation was already serious and required attention. Igor promised to bring her to the carriage to provide the necessary assistance and transportation, without leaving her alone in such a state. The lady seemed to be truly overtired, because her fatigue was noticeable even to strangers, and this caused concern among everyone. They told her that she had disappeared, and that she did not understand what she was doing, because her state was so absent-minded that she herself did not realize it. The lady asked how far the hospital was, and he was told that it was very close, but it would be difficult for her to walk there, given her condition and fatigue. Then the lady said that she could manage on her own, but Igor noticed that it was difficult for her to walk, so he would like to take her there and help her get to the place. The game wondered why she hadn't said earlier that she was injured, since hiding such a thing was thoughtless and could lead to complications. He looked at her carefully, his eyes shining gold, and his horse stood next to him, as if ready to set off on the journey with them. The lady did not understand why he said this. His words were incomprehensible, and she tried to figure out his real intentions. The gentleman assured that if this was the case, he was always ready to help and would not leave her in a difficult situation without support. But the lady could not understand why he was looking at her in that way. She was confused by his feelings, which seemed unusual. Feelings for a woman he was about to divorce seemed strange and inappropriate, but there was genuine concern on his face. He suggested that she mount her horse to return more quickly to the estate, where she could receive the necessary treatment and rest. However, Mrs. Elena insisted on being treated in the hospital, and he agreed to take her there so that she would feel better. The lady noticed that the horse was too tight for her, and she was not very comfortable riding in such a state. She refused to ride together, but the gentleman reminded her that she had liked it before, and riding was her habit. The lady turned to Philip, noting that he was an attractive companion, but that today she preferred to refuse company. She thought that she meant not just a companion, but a person with whom her life is connected. But now it is better to stay away, given the divorce. The Count asked Igor to take his horse to clear the way for him and help organize the trip for the lady. She said that he must find a carriage and take her to Smith Hospital to help as soon as possible, without losing a minute of time. Igor bowed and immediately began to carry out the order, without delaying for a second. The Count said that it was time for them to leave as well, so as not to disturb anyone and prepare for departure. He picked up the lady in his arms and carried her, although it was unexpected and seemed too abrupt for everyone present. The lady was confused by this action, not understanding why he took her in his arms so suddenly, as if it were something ordinary. She asked what he was doing, trying to understand his motives and the reasons for such behavior. The Count explained that even if he were her husband or a stranger, it would be faster and more convenient to get to the place. She did not understand what the word cringe meant, but he, in turn, had not the slightest idea of its meaning. The lady noted that this word was from another dialect and added that it was better not to talk to her about this topic at all. The gentleman said that she would probably recover faster in silence, so there was no need to distract her with conversations. She insisted that he not talk to her at all, wanting to be in peace and quiet. At the hospital, she sat on the couch, and the doctor, Leica, carefully examined her legs and arms, which he had already carefully bandaged. He noted that the cause was mild inflammation, so there was no serious cause for concern. He said that she should feel a little better now, and that she would be able to feel better every hour. She was grateful when Igor came and said that the carriage had already been found and was waiting for them for the trip. The lady expressed her gratitude and said that it was time for them to leave so as not to delay their further journey. After being discharged from the hospital, the Duke walked his lady to the carriage, supporting her hand so that it would not fall, despite her fatigue and weakness after the treatment. On the way out, the Duke unexpectedly lifted his lady into his arms, intending to carry her to the carriage without any extra effort on her part. The lady was embarrassed, not expecting such a tender act from a man who usually kept his distance and was cold. She couldn't understand what exactly was happening and why the Duke was treating her like that at that moment. The Duke smiled, noticing her confusion, but there was no usual coldness or detachment in his gaze. However, deep down, she knew that the Duke had no love or warm feelings for her. His intention was only to quickly formalize the divorce and free himself from a marriage that had long since become a formality. Previously, he often showed his discontent, not hiding his irritation and fatigue from living together. Now, smiling, she decided that as soon as he carried her to the carriage, he would immediately go about his business without delay. But the Duke surprised her even more. He sat in the carriage with her, which was unexpected and unusual behavior. He said they needed to stop by a boutique to pick out some essentials, which was beyond her expectations. Igor, who was present nearby, could not understand what exactly they were talking about and why such an unexpected trip. The gentleman reminded that it was not worth repeating requests twice, expecting that Igor would understand and fulfill the requirement without unnecessary questions. Igor still insisted that he needed to clarify the details, but in the end, they headed to the boutique to carry out their plan. Upon arrival, they got out of the carriage with the lady and headed towards the entrance to the boutique, preparing for the upcoming selection. The boutique staff was grateful and proud that the Count and Countess visited their store, showing high status and respect. They were shown a comfortable place where the gentleman could sit down and rest while they looked at the store's assortment. After they sat down, the lady began to carefully study the catalog with various goods and offers of the boutique. The Count asked the staff to bring him whatever they could recommend to help him with his choice and not waste time. The lady noted that here, as in other boutiques, it is customary to bring items to customers for inspection and trying on, which makes the shopping process easier. After some time, the woman returned with perfumes that had just been delivered. Among them was a new scent that she wanted to tell about. She explained that they recently added an aphrodisiac perfume to their collection, which has already become quite popular among customers. The base of this perfume was the scent of rose hips, which surprised the woman, and she decided to clarify the details with the saleswoman. The woman decided to smell the aroma herself and said that the smell was very pleasant and unusual for her, despite the unusual component. Everyone present was slightly shocked when the Lord admitted that he really liked this perfume, although they expected the opposite. The lady did not understand what exactly the problem was and asked him to try again and express his opinion. Elena asked what exactly was wrong and whether the scent really didn't suit her that much, causing doubts among those around her. The Lord replied that this was not the case at all and asked if she really liked the smell as much as she said. She reiterated her words, and he noticed that for the first time he saw her smile sincerely, and for the first time he did not hear her complain about anything. Then the lady suddenly realized that there was something strange in this story and asked what he was saying, doubting his words. She suggested that this perfume might have a mysterious property, as if it beckons the mind and influences a person's perception. The woman confirmed that there are rumors that the first person to inhale this scent will fall in love for 1,000 years with the nearest person of the opposite sex. This mysterious effect of the perfume created a special atmosphere around them, making everyone wonder how strong its magic really was. After this, the lady immediately threw away the small bottle and without much hesitation threw it straight onto the floor, as if it were an empty thing without any value. The woman could not understand what exactly happened to the Countess at that moment. Her behavior seemed strange and unpredictable, causing surprise and anxiety at the same time. If everything that happened is really true, then this could become a real disaster, because the closest person of the opposite sex for the Countess is only Philip, who was nearby at that moment. But after the divorce, Philip significantly reduced his relationship with a woman named Delina, which complicated the situation and did not allow for a quick solution or support from him. And Elena herself could only grieve and suffer from unrequited love, which tormented her and did not give her peace, despite all the events that took place and attempts to forget. Elena said that the Countess seemed to have gone completely mad, because such important things need to be explained before you open the lid and use something incomprehensible and mysterious. It was necessary to ask the Countess to calm down, because magic perfume is just the name of one of the fragrances from the novel, where it is described as the most amazing and attractive. Mr. Renaud commissioned this novel from the writer specifically to promote the sales of the perfume, which made this fragrance a product of placement and nothing more than an advertising ploy. But the Countess had already begun to believe that this was truly a magical perfume, and this frightened her to the depths of her soul, because such thoughts could throw her off balance. The Count turned away from her at that moment, realizing that her words contained a hidden hint specifically at him, and he felt uncomfortable with such attention and suspicion. She also said that, in any case, he should not miss it, and now it is worth showing the next item to dispel all doubts and explain the situation. The woman showed a magic patch, which was truly enchanted, and that is why it was very expensive and aroused genuine interest among everyone present. This patch quickly relieved pain and became very popular among wealthy people who could afford to buy such an expensive and effective product. The lady asked whether the gentleman knew about the existence of this object and why he did not use it. The Count explained that he used it only in cases of severe pain. The thing was more of a luxury than a necessity. He added that he was trying to find out about the patch no less than the woman herself, since Renoir, mentioned in the conversation, is her father, which gives the situation a special meaning. To better understand what was going on, the woman decided to pretend to be innocent and simple-minded, hoping that she would be able to find out more useful information. She clarified whether Renoir was indeed her biological father, trying to clarify family ties and their influence on current events. After this, the woman asked to show her the next object, wanting to study the situation in more detail and not miss important details. The woman said that they had some beautiful umbrellas that might interest the lady and would be a suitable accessory. They were both very attractive, and the woman admitted that she could not decide which umbrella to choose, as she liked both equally. The Count advised not to rush and take both umbrellas at once, so as not to miss the opportunity to get exactly what he liked. However, Elena planned to buy only one of these umbrellas, not intending to buy two at once, although the offer sounded tempting. She also decided to take a look at the fan, which caught her attention with its beauty and exquisite design. The main material of the fan was elephant tusk, the quality of which was so high that it was compared to products given to the king. The Count was amazed and asked if there were really so many elephants that their tusks were used to make such fans, expressing surprise at the scale of production. The woman replied that this was not true. Elephants were on the verge of extinction, and she also really liked this fan. It turned out to be worthy of the Countess's attention. The lady admitted that the fan was beautiful, but she would not use such items, preferring to refuse such luxury. He couldn't understand why she was saying that, and she explained that it probably took killing an entire elephant to get the material or product she needed. He felt slightly embarrassed, not knowing what to answer in such a situation, as if her words had caught him by surprise and confused him. He noticed that she had previously seemed to like things made of ivory, and that this seemed to be her weakness or preference in jewelry. Then she became thoughtful, as if she realized that perhaps she had made a mistake, and her previous attitude towards this issue required revision and correction. He noticed that, moreover, the bone really suited him well and looked harmonious with his image and style. She hadn't expected such a remark. It was something new to her, something that wasn't in the original version of the story, or something she had simply forgotten to mention earlier. The lady admitted that she had not previously known how things stood, but now her opinion had changed. Killing elephants for their bones seemed to her a terrible act. He was surprised by such a statement, did not expect to hear something like that from her, and she added that she would like to see a law introduced to protect elephants from cruel hunting. She hoped that this law would help stop the ruthless hunting of these animals and save their population from complete destruction. The Count asked her if she really thought so, and the lady firmly confirmed that this was exactly the case. This was her sincere opinion. Then the Count asked that everything the Countess bought today be written down on Count Maurice's account, as if to ease her expenses and show concern. He said he was about to leave and wished her a pleasant shopping experience, being polite and respectful of her wishes and plans. She was left perplexed, not understanding why he left so quickly, as if his hasty departure was unexpected and inexplicable to her. Later, she began to understand why he suddenly began to leave. There was some reason or feeling hidden in this action that she had yet to unravel. This made her a little anxious, and she decided to ask Igor what was going on with the gentleman, why he was behaving so strangely and silently. Igor replied that he himself did not really know where the gentleman was now, and why he was acting this way. Perhaps he himself did not yet fully understand the situation. The master's main business was the ivory trade, and apparently she had forgotten about it, which could have caused misunderstandings and tension between them. The Count had recently been out elephant hunting, and it was then that the lady realized what was really going on, openly criticizing Philip for his passion for hunting. She probably should have apologized and admitted that she didn't know all the details, but it doesn't matter anymore since they're going to get divorced anyway. Igor turned to the lady with a question, and she looked at him with bewilderment, trying to understand his intentions and the essence of the conversation. She asked what he meant by that question, as if trying to understand why he was discussing everything so seriously. Igor asked whether this divorce had really been planned in advance, but the lady remained silent in response, not wanting to reveal her thoughts. In his office, the Count recalled how the lady had said that killing elephants for ivory was terrible and inhumane, and this had deeply moved him. She expressed her desire for a law to be passed to protect elephants from cruel hunting in order to preserve these majestic animals. Previously, the lady believed that the ivory business was a profitable business and an important part of their family income. She said it was better to get rid of wild elephants by breeding them and starving them than to engage in hunting, which she considered cruel and senseless. Immediately after she signed the divorce papers, her speech and behavior changed dramatically, as if she had become a different person. The Count did not want to think that she was only pretending her feelings and love for him, but doubts still began to creep into his heart. But this was impossible. After all, for 10 whole years she had been madly obsessed with him, every moment thinking only about him, not giving herself peace for a minute. Oddly enough, it was clear from her behavior that she was just waiting for the moment to finally get a divorce, to start a new life without him. But something was clearly changing in her thoughts, and it soon became clear to them that he had long since lost all feelings for her, and there was not a drop of that former love left. At that very moment, when she was so close to him, his heart almost stopped. A sudden feeling pierced him more than any pain. But it's better not to think about it now. There are too many painful memories that only prevent you from focusing on the present. It is obvious that she is trying to deceive him, hide her real intentions, and play with him as if he were a simple pawn on a chessboard. He took out the letter and looked at it carefully, as if searching for answers to all his tormenting questions in these lines. Only now did he realize how wonderful a person she really was, how she illuminated his life, despite everything in the past. Maybe he should pretend he doesn't know anything and call off the divorce, give them a chance to try to make things right. But, unfortunately, this won't work out. The truth is too deep and too painful to leave room for lies. He decided not to think about it anymore, because now was an important time for the prosperity of their family and the fulfillment of long-term plans. He is already too old to personally suppress the rebels, and his son is not yet mature enough for such tasks. Besides, he himself is very tired and wants to live his last years in peace. Count Maurice accepted the king's offer with favor, seeing it as a chance to strengthen his position and secure the future of his house. When the former queen died, Count Maurice took her 10-year-old son under his wing and raised him carefully as if he were his own. The king's condition was deteriorating day by day, and now it was clear that it was time to seriously prepare for the transfer of power and inheritance. There was less and less time left. He threw away the letter, which no longer gave him hope, and decided to write down how much time was left, so that he would understand exactly how close everything was to change. Sitting in his office, he stared intently at the sheet of paper in front of him, trying to comprehend the seriousness of the situation and think through his next steps. The time had come to tell the children the news. It was necessary, despite the gravity of the moment, and he knew it could not be delayed. He called his son along with his bride to discuss important matters that could no longer wait. Marlborough, noticing the invitation, asked if his father had called him, and was preparing to hear something important. Father said directly that it seemed like the time had come to begin preparing for the inheritance and all the changes that would come with it. Layla was shocked by the news, and her husband couldn't hide his excitement either. Everything seemed too serious and unexpected. Princess Layla, of the small kingdom of Perdes, was the victim of a political marriage forced upon her by the usurpation of power, and it always left a mark on her soul. She remained withdrawn and sad for a long time, but over time she opened up to Marlborough and sincerely fell in love with him, although she again faced a difficult choice. The father asked what exactly had happened and what was causing the alarm, expecting an honest answer from his son. Marlborough admitted that Layla might be in danger, and although he would rather inherit the earldom than ascend the dangerous throne, it was too late to retreat now. He realized that trials were inevitable, and it was useless to talk about doubts and fears now. He would have to decide boldly and without delay. The gentleman expressed concern and promised to put the book under guard, and also clarified how Elena had been treating them lately and how she had been behaving towards her family. Layla replied that since time had passed, they had heard almost nothing from Elena. It was as if she had disappeared from their lives and did not show the slightest interest in communication. The Count was so shocked by this news that he could not believe that Elena could really become so distant and stop communicating with her loved ones. Marlborough also noted that after their return from their honeymoon, he never saw Elena, and she seemed to no longer care about the relationship with them. The gentleman suggested that Elena seemed to be making no attempt to maintain contact and had no intention of returning to her previous relationship or conversations with her family. He added that Elena usually tries to quickly go to the children, as if she is afraid or does not want to stay with them longer, which causes him anxiety and bewilderment. He asked if she remembered how she had once told them, "Welcome to hell." Marlborough noted that he had been shown that side too, but apparently it was all decided now. Layla noted that if he was so worried, it meant that he could not openly express his feelings, and Elena herself never came, which only confirmed her indifference. The Count was very surprised that Aliona never showed up, and it seemed completely unbelievable to him. How could she have become so distant from her family? It turned out that Elena didn't even send her greetings, and thanks to this, Layla was able to rest peacefully after a difficult journey without experiencing unnecessary worries. The Count had a hard time believing the truth of such circumstances, and his daughter-in-law suggested that perhaps Elena was trying to toughen up Layla since she was too weak before the wedding. Although it is not entirely clear how one could act so cruelly if one was really trying to toughen up and prepare Layla for the future. In any case, Layla admitted that she was happy with how things turned out, although she wondered if Elena was preparing something against them after the divorce. Marlborough wondered if this was really the case. He asked his father if he was going to divorce him during the grace period to see if the situation was clear. It seemed that something had changed, because even the children noticed it, and the kick was so powerful that it left a truly impressive impression. If she really has changed, then it's worth considering. But you can't trust her completely, because she was with him for 10 years straight. There is clearly something different here. They probably have some kind of goal of their own that no one can yet accurately understand or solve. Marlborough had never seen anything like it, and the lady was surprised that she already had candles that in their original form would only become popular in 3 years. She remarked that it was interesting where he got these candles from, since the lady works a lot with such products and knows their market. The girl said that candles are produced in different countries, but those made in Renoir sell especially well. They are in special demand. Marlborough then provided her with the best candles from Renoir, assuming that everyone was buying them precisely because of their supplies to the royal palace and their high quality. The Countess said that if she had brought a special candle, she would certainly have been able to sell it, since such goods are in demand among the elite. The girl asked again what exactly they were talking about, and the lady replied that it was a commercial secret that could not be disclosed to outsiders. The girl said that she had to see the product to judge it, but if it was really special and relevant now, then of course she would sell it. The lady ordered that all the selected candles, which she had carefully selected in advance, be packed for her. Her wish was that everything be collected neatly and ready for transportation. He thought that 4 candles were not enough for investment, but he realized that this was a great start for a business if you approach the matter seriously and wisely. Egri was interested in why the lady decided to buy such a large number of candles. It seemed a strange and unusual decision to him. She replied that he would soon understand the reasons for her purchase, and that everything had a deeper meaning that would be revealed later. His thoughts went to the fact that perhaps the lady was planning to build some kind of temple or hold a ceremony using a lot of candles. Within an hour, all the candles were delivered to the castle, and this event did not go unnoticed. The castle immediately began to discuss their appearance. Later, the maids brought all these candles to the mistress, and she examined each one with interest, checking the quality and quantity. The lady looked closely at her candles, enjoying the view and anticipating that something important and unusual would soon begin. At that moment, the Duke suddenly burst into the room and began asking what kind of candles they needed and why they needed so many of them. The lady explained that she decided to try herself in a new business, selling candles, in order to expand her opportunities. The Duke was surprised to hear that candles could be used not only for decoration, but also as the basis for a profitable business. She added that, for now, it is a secret, and it is not worth revealing all plans ahead of time in order to maintain the intrigue and the possibility of success. The Duke asked how she intended to run this business, since she had no experience at all in trade or business. The lady calmly replied that one should not judge others by oneself. She already had a clear plan that she was going to implement. He noted that many people talk about plans but end up failing, and that there are many such cases where people do not achieve their goals. The Duke admitted he was worried that the money for the business would eventually be taken from their home, which could create problems for everyone. Many Express said that she was not worried because she was confident in her abilities, and the business of producing scented candles was only the first step on the path to success. The Lord told him to stop asking unnecessary questions and just drink tea. The position on filing divorce papers has changed dramatically in recent years. The lady was surprised by such words, and he noticed that her attitude towards money was different from before, because she had never served him tea before. The lady wondered if she was being too kind, and decided to find out how they usually did it before tea to understand the situation better. The gentleman said that she really did look like the one he remembered, because before she always served him tea herself with special care. The lady first said that she did not remember how exactly she had done it before, and asked him to show how it happened, because she was interested. He was surprised by her request, but said that pouring tea was not difficult, and suggested that she could try to do it herself to remember. In the end, the gentleman decided to agree and show her how he usually did it to dispel her doubts and help her remember. He picked up the cup of tea and first turned his waist slightly, showing the motion he used to pour the tea neatly. She didn't understand what exactly he was trying to do and why he was making such movements, because it seemed that everything was simple and ordinary. It looked rather awkward, and he felt awkward, but he said he always did that when he poured tea, carefully touching his lips with his fingertips. She was shocked by such strange behavior, and he admitted that he did this even in the presence of other people. For him, it was natural. She decided that he was just crazy, and said that she herself was not crazy, because for her, such manners looked strange and incomprehensible. He noted that for him, it was always a joy and a little happiness, which lifted his spirits and made the moment special. The lady stated that she had never remembered anything like that. It simply did not exist in her memory and had never occurred to her. It seemed completely impossible to her. Then she added that Philip should forget the old Alina forever. Such a situation should not be repeated. It will not happen again. After these words, she called the butler, who immediately approached her, ready to listen and help in everything that was needed. She asked him how he was feeling now, showing concern and interest in his condition after what happened. They say that she was in shock and did not get up from her seat. She was so surprised by the situation and his behavior. The butler replied that he felt great and was very grateful to the lady. It was thanks to her that he was able to get back in order and recover. She said that if he was still sick, then he definitely needed to rest more and not overexert himself for the sake of the matter. He replied that for him, it was like a chainsaw. It made him work non-stop. So she asked to find out more about the family's financial situation and bring books with detailed information. The lady added that if he was too busy, he need not worry or rush with this task. The butler was surprised and said that for the first time, Madame was asking him for something rather than ordering him, and this touched him and inspired respect. The lady was amazed and suddenly realized that she had been a villain before, because a villain would have simply ordered and not asked with such care and respect. He assured that he would definitely bring the necessary books and explain in detail everything that was required of him. After a while, the butler returned with the books and placed them on the table, ready for conversation and explanations. She was surprised and could not understand whether they really had so much money. How impressive was the financial situation. The building that Elena wants is very inexpensive, almost pennies, but the expenses shock her. They seem simply terrible and inexplicable. Sometimes it's hard to understand how she could spend money so thoughtlessly, because she spent everything she tried to earn with her own labor. She also got into debt through ill-considered investments and gambling, which only worsened her financial situation. It is estimated that it will take her about 10 more years to pay off these debts and stabilize the situation. In today's money, this amount amounts to approximately 800 billion, which seems like an incredibly large figure. Elena thought she was going crazy because the house that Philip bought on the very last day was on her list of property. Philip seemed to her like a holy man, and it was unclear how he decided to divorce such a woman, despite everything. She then turned to the butler and asked if all her purchases were really in the vault on the 4th floor. He confirmed that this was so, and Elena decided that this was excellent, because they definitely needed to examine all of this carefully. She asked the butler to take her there to see everything that was stored there and sort out the property. Together, they came to the right doors, and the butler easily opened them, letting Elena inside. She was amazed, even shocked, when she saw all this huge stock of things that were stored here. There was a huge number of outfits and decorations lying around the room, so many that it was hard to find everything. Without any business, just by selling these things, you could become a real billionaire. They were so valuable. Elena asked if after the divorce, she would be able to take all this property for herself, to preserve it and manage it in her own way. The butler replied that it was her property, and of course, after the divorce, she would be able to take everything for herself without any problems. The lady carefully examined all her possessions and felt a real shock from what she saw. The scale of her property was astounding. She noticed that Philip did not say a word while she was making all these expensive purchases, as if indifferent to the expenses. The butler reminded her that she knew perfectly well that the owner allowed her to spend funds without restrictions, trusting her decisions. The lady was surprised at how Philip could afford such colossal expenses, But the butler emphasized that he tolerated everything. He added that the owner most likely does not know exactly what she bought in her shopping spree. She asked where Philip was now, and the butler replied that he was probably resting in his office, without any worries. The lady asked the butler to close the door, as she needed to discuss something personally with Philip, without outsiders. In her thoughts, she felt calm, realizing that all this luxury now belonged to her, the golden part of her new world. She decided to carefully check everything that was purchased, without haste and shortcomings, in order to understand the details. After these reflections, the lady approached the office and, without hesitation, entered Philip, intending to clarify important issues. Turning to Philip, she caught him by surprise. He clearly did not expect to see his wife at that moment, and looked surprised. She explained that she had come with a question that had been bothering her for a long time, and wanted to discuss it without delay. She may have asked Philip to look at her closely, trying to understand his attitude and reaction to what was happening. Philip, in turn, thought that something like this had already happened or was about to happen, as if preparing for the inevitable. The lady admitted that she might have disturbed his rest, but she was concerned about an important matter and needed to hear his opinion. He said that this was not the case, and advised her to clarify exactly what she wanted in order to avoid misunderstandings and clarify the situation completely. She admitted that she didn't understand why he couldn't just turn his face around to have a better conversation and be honest in the conversation between them. He explained that he was simply wearing comfortable clothes, and it didn't mean anything special. It was just that comfort was more important than formality at that moment. She asked whether he was really naked, in order to understand how close the situation was to informality and how to behave in this environment. But the gentleman assured her that this was not so, and she could not understand what exactly about his convenience seemed strange or out of place. She suggested that we just talk normally, looking each other in the eye, in order to establish real contact and sort things out without any misunderstandings. He replied that he couldn't do that, but she walked over to him and turned the chair so that they could finally meet face to face. She noticed that he was wearing the same golden robe that the children had given them, a thing that symbolized care and family warmth. He asked how she could turn her chair so suddenly, clearly not expecting such a decisive step on her part. Now it became clear why Elena yearned for his attention so much. Every moment of real closeness was important to her. He admitted that he had only tried on the robe once, as it was a gift, and he was not used to wearing it all the time. She didn't say a word about the robe, but noted that it suited him, praising the children for choosing a good gift, because it was important to him. The gentleman laughed, and she promised not to tell anyone about the robe, keeping a little secret between them that brings them closer. She then asked if she could do something just once, hinting at a desire to show her intimacy in an unusual way. He asked what exactly they were talking about, and she decided to ask if she could kiss him once, expressing her feelings. He was very embarrassed and didn't even know how to respond to this, unexpectedly faced with such a revelation. His embarrassment grew, and he asked again if she really wanted to kiss him, trying to understand her intentions. She said that they were still married, and he noted that she was simply pestering him at every opportunity and doing it on purpose. She added that if he does not want to continue, she will understand and will not insist. She is ready to respect his decision without offense. Nevertheless, he agreed, but specified that only once and no more, as if he was afraid of the consequences of this agreement. She was very surprised by his decision, and he closed his eyes and prepared himself for the kiss, as if preparing for something important and unusual. She asked him to open his lips, as if inviting him to something closer and more intimate, conveying her feelings without words. After that, she kissed him tenderly on the forehead, showing care and tenderness that was more important than words and actions. He didn't understand what exactly he was doing, but she said it was very sweet and touching, as if appreciating their moment. He noticed that she seemed to be just joking with him, and his embarrassment became obvious, because he did not expect such a game. She admitted that she had simply decided to lighten the mood with a joke, and he was so embarrassed that he could not hide his excitement. She also noted that the robe he was wearing belonged to Dima, and he could wear it if he wanted, as if offering comfort. However, he was curious as to why she had come to see him at such a time, and she admitted that she had been interested in his financial affairs. He noted that she shouldn't be told that there wasn't enough money, because in reality, things were different, and she should just not panic. She was surprised that they hadn't divorced yet, although it seemed strange to her, and he didn't understand why exactly she was saying this. She expressed gratitude that he allowed her to spend as much as she wanted, but she didn't understand why things had gone so far, and why he had allowed it. He knew it was the only way to help her cope with the stress of the upcoming adoption, and he genuinely wanted to make it easier for her. The lady acknowledged that he had indeed made every effort to support her, despite the difficult circumstances and many difficulties they had to face. He had endured a lot for her, and now she was going to try to resolve at least some of the financial problems that were weighing on them before she left his office. She calmly turned and began to walk away, leaving him in silence, feeling that this time everything had gone as it should, albeit with some uncertainty about the future. Although she always looked beautiful, her passion for meticulous preening sometimes seemed excessive and exhausting, especially at such important moments. He soon noticed that she came to him in a robe, as if hinting at the closeness and trust that was gradually becoming part of their relationship. She noted that it was improper to wear the robe alone, since according to the rules of their duties, they were supposed to be worn together, creating a sense of unity. After all, this is exactly how it was intended, for the robes to serve as a symbol of their closeness and support for each other in any situation. She suddenly took his hand and pulled him along, not giving him time to think, forcing him to give in to her determination and attitude. He was simply stunned by her behavior, not understanding what was happening and why she was changing the atmosphere between them so abruptly. She explained that he had broken the rules and deserved punishment. A kiss, which, according to her, should fix everything. She also noted that being so beautiful without warning is also a violation that deserves a response. In the end, he made up his mind and responded to her initiative by kissing her, despite the unexpectedness of the situation. Their lips met in a kiss that seemed both tender and passionate at the same time, reflecting the complexity of their relationship. They kissed right on the couch in his office, as if they had forgotten about everything around them and were immersed in this moment. But soon after the kiss, she slapped him sharply across the face, as if bringing everything back to reality and reminding him of the boundaries. He couldn't understand what exactly happened to Elena, why she so suddenly changed her behavior and struck. When he turned around, he saw that the chair had been turned around, a detail that added to the strangeness of the situation and seemed important. In reality, it all turned out to be just a figment of his imagination, but he liked how his thoughts played with reality and emotions. She lay in bed all this time, not understanding what to do next. There was only emptiness and uncertainty in her head about how to act in this situation. Maybe she was too old to act so confused and not know how to move forward. Everything seemed too confusing and far from clear. After all, she kissed him on the forehead. This gesture meant more than words. It was filled with warmth and hope that something important could still be preserved between them. Maybe they still had a chance to improve their relationship if only they could understand and forgive each other, forgetting the grievances and mistakes of the past. There must always be a villain in a story. Otherwise, the plot becomes too flat and boring, and the heroes become too perfect and uninteresting. The villain creates the necessary tension, thanks to which the protagonist passes the tests and ultimately receives a well-deserved reward for his efforts. But now she is Elena, and she can no longer play the role of a villain, realizing that this will only lead to destruction and death, from which no one will benefit. She decided to sell everything she had to earn money for her plans, leaving a little for Philip, and then leave the house that had become her prison. The decision was made. From tomorrow, she would begin to act, simultaneously taking care of the children and trying to maintain their well-being no matter what. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was Philip, who had come with some kind of gift that she did not expect to receive from him now. He appeared before her, holding a gift in his hands, and she didn't know what to expect, but she allowed him in because she felt it was important. Her anticipation was filled with anxiety. She thought that something serious had happened, and she was ready for any news. But Philip simply said that he brought a gift especially for her to show his attitude and do something meaningful. She couldn't immediately understand what kind of gift it was and why he needed it, but the attention touched her heart. He admitted that he would no longer wear the item himself, believing that she would look better in it and would be able to appreciate it. According to him, The gift would suit her much better than it would him, and he took 3 sets to have enough for every day of the week. Such a gesture meant not just a thing, but a symbol of change and a new stage in their relationship, which was just beginning. He was so embarrassed that he didn't seem to want to wear the robe at all. Perhaps he was afraid that if they wore the same robe, she would ask for the divorce to be called off. She didn't understand why she would give him the robe if he wasn't even going to wear it. It seemed he didn't want to take it with him so much that he was ready to give it up entirely. She said that she already had a lot of robes and was not going to ask for the divorce to be canceled because of the pair of robes. She did not want to cause any extra problems because of this. If he doesn't like the robe, she simply won't wear hers. In that case, he can wear it himself and not bother anyone. He didn't understand what she was talking about. Then she reminded him that he himself had said that he would no longer wear that robe and was clearly avoiding it. He is probably afraid that she will change her mind about the divorce. But she also wants to start a new life and has made a final decision by sending the documents to the court. He was shocked when he heard this. She just wanted him not to worry and think that she would change her mind at the last moment. His surprise was obvious. He had not expected such an answer and did not know how to react to her decisiveness. The lady did not understand why he was looking at her in that way. She read something incomprehensible and disturbing in his gaze. He explained that it was a misunderstanding and that he had not come with the intentions she might have thought. She didn't understand why he had come at all, and he said that he simply thought that the robe really suited her and wanted her to wear it. The lady could not understand what he wanted to say by this and why he spoke about it so strangely. Then he said that he would rather go and wish her good night, as if he wanted to avoid further conversation. She thought he was being kind to her at that moment, or she was simply mistaken and mistook kindness for something else. According to the plot, Philip should not have behaved as inappropriately and provocatively as he did at that moment, because his behavior did not correspond to what was expected. The next day, the lady called Igor to her place, deciding to discuss important matters that required his presence and attention. The butler entered her room and asked if she had called him specially, or if he simply wanted to make sure that he was expected. The lady replied that she had called Igor specifically, so she was ready to receive him, but she was surprised why the butler had come instead of him. He explained that Igor was currently busy with the owner, and the lady herself did not understand why he was with Philip at that moment. The butler simply called Igor only, without explanation, not understanding what exactly caused such an unexpected situation. He didn't know why everything had suddenly turned out this way, and he tried to understand why everything had happened this way right now. The lady was surprised, because Philip usually rarely calls or speaks, but the butler noted that today the Count immediately called Igor as soon as he entered the office. She quickly assumed that something had happened and felt anxious, realizing that the situation could be serious. The butler asked if he could help in this difficult situation, trying to be useful. The lady replied that this was not the case, but asked him to call a merchant who had a lot of money for a possible deal. Then the Turkish man thought that the lady was going to sell something, and she confirmed that she wanted to sell all her works of art. She asked how long the process would take, wanting to understand how long it could drag on. Dvoretsky began to talk about the most active buyer he knew and suggested bringing in a professional appraiser, even if it took time. The lady said that in that case, she wanted him to call both the buyer and the appraiser, so that the matter would proceed quickly and correctly. Elena asked to organize a celebration in honor of Layla, instructing to arrange a celebration on a grand scale so that no important people would be left without attention and an invitation. Count Philip was surprised by such an order, but asked again whether this was exactly what the lady had ordered. She confirmed that the preparations had to be impeccable, and the banquet had to be large-scale, with all free aristocrats invited. That same day, a merchant arrived at the castle. He thanked the countess for the invitation and noted that he was ready to offer the best prices for goods to justify her trust. Elena noticed a decoration on the merchant's hand that caught her attention. It looked quite unusual and expensive, as if it hid some kind of secret. The merchant seemed to be a very stingy and greedy man. His look and manner of doing business made one think that he was not very ready to make concessions. She asked him to follow her to show her all the things she was going to sell and to find out how he would value them at a fair price. Together, they went into the room where the items for sale were kept, furnished tastefully, but with a touch of antiquity and some neglect. Elena asked him to carefully evaluate each item and write down the price, in order to have an idea of the real cost and possible profit from the sale. The merchant named a price for the crystal mermaid figurine, saying that it was a bit old, and offered only 2 gold pieces for it, which seemed like an extremely low amount. They reminded that 5 years ago, such a statuette cost 10 gold coins. That is, the price had dropped significantly, which raised questions in Aliona. 1 gold coin in modern terms was equivalent to about $1,000, so the difference in price was significant and alarming to her. The merchant continued to price the rest of the items, and Elena noticed that he sometimes offered more for individual items than they were worth at the time, which seemed strange. She realized that he was trying to gain her trust in order to then underprice the rest of the goods and thus deceive her as a whole, receiving an unfair advantage. She asked Igor to find out if there were any other items he could sell. This was important to understand the full picture and assess the property. She also noticed that in the morning, Philip had called Igor only about the Lestert case. Igor confirmed that this was indeed the case, and the lady became interested in why exactly he had been called. Igor explained that the gentleman had checked in the divorce papers to see if he had actually sent the necessary papers so that everything would be officially formalized. He confirmed that he had told the truth, and the documents were sent with a seal, which meant that the divorce procedure was completed according to all the rules. Perhaps the lady simply did not trust Igor and doubted that he had fulfilled all his obligations as expected. After some time, Igor reported that all the items had been assessed, and now they could move on to the next stage of property inspection. The lady stated that she then suggested looking into the next room to continue the inspection and find out what was stored there. The butler apologized for the delay, and Igor said that he and the butler would show everything necessary, and the lady could rest for now without rushing. The lady trusted them, so she decided to leave for a while to give them the opportunity to finish the examination without her presence. Ultimately, employees always feel nervous when their boss is around and try to behave as carefully as possible. She said she was going to take a walk around the house and asked to be informed when all the assessment work was completed. As she walked down the corridor, the lady saw open doors and noticed that work was still going on in the room. She had worked in similar conditions before and understood very well what it was like to be under constant control and stress. After that, she noticed a gardener working in the garden. He was carefully trimming a tree, focused and without unnecessary movements, as if he was performing an important task. She was surprised by his patience and neatness when she suddenly saw a garden wheelbarrow parked nearby, which added realism to this simple scene. When she noticed how the gardener was changing, as if he was undergoing an evolution, it caused her great surprise, as if an unexpected secret was being revealed to her. She hid behind a thick tree, unable to believe her eyes, and what exactly she had just seen in the garden right under her nose. Unable to resist, she cautiously approached him from behind to get a better look at what was happening, despite her fear of being noticed. Suddenly, she grabbed the man by the shoulders, and he was very scared, not expecting such a sharp touch from a stranger, which caused his sharp reaction. He lost his balance in surprise and fell from the stepladder he had just been standing on, as if struck by lightning at the most inopportune moment. Quickly coming to his senses, he realized that, to the gardener, she looked like a real monster, a mysterious and frightening woman with unpredictable behavior. Alyona had always been considered a villain, and at that moment, her image in the gardener's eyes only intensified, as if she were from a legend about scary characters. She had to play her part to keep her true intentions from being revealed, and she asked the gardener to rise, keeping her voice cool. The man was very frightened and, not daring to look her in the eyes, lowered his head, as if admitting his defeat in this strange situation. She insisted that he stand still, like a teacher demanding obedience from a student, leaving him no choice and not allowing him to relax. She spoke to him calmly, repeating, "At ease, as if subordinating him to her will, demonstrating control over the situation. She continued to play with him, demanding that he do 20 push-ups, as if testing his readiness for obedience and strength of character. The man was shocked by such a demand, but she asked if he wanted anything else, as if the game was still going on, and they were waiting for an answer from him. He quietly replied that he would only be beaten with a whip, showing that he feared punishment more than physical exercise. She was surprised and asked if he was really afraid of the whip, trying to understand the depth of his fear and control the situation further. He confirmed that he did not want punishment and immediately began doing push-ups, obeying her demands. Although he remained scared and tense, his push-ups were very beautiful and correct, which Elena really liked, causing her a strange feeling of admiration even in this strange game. She did not understand what exactly was happening to her and why she continued this, not realizing that the Count was watching both of them. He, too, did not understand why he was spying on this, experiencing an internal contradiction mixed with curiosity and perhaps surprise. It could have been just a pretense or something else that was not entirely clear, but it was important to understand the true motives behind what was happening. It was necessary to sort out the situation, while the gardener continued to do push-ups in front of the lady, trying not to miss a single detail. After such efforts, he finally stopped, breathing heavily and trying to pull himself together, as if he was tired of fighting with himself. The lady asked who exactly ordered him to stop doing push-ups, showing interest in the reason for his stop. Without waiting for an answer, he immediately began to perform the exercise again, as if trying to prove something with his will. She wanted to watch his muscles a little longer, realizing that this was already going beyond the limits of ordinary attention. She then asked him if he understood why she was making him do this, trying to get to the bottom of what was happening. He replied that he acknowledged his guilt and understood that he had done wrong, although the reason was not entirely clear. The lady asked what exactly his guilt was, wanting to get a more precise explanation. He admitted that he was to blame for not showing up for the date she had arranged for him in advance. The lady was completely shocked by his words and could not understand what date he was talking about. Then she asked him to tell her everything in more detail to find out what really happened. A few months ago, she ordered him to come by midnight, but he did not follow her order, which caused her displeasure. She asked with interest if he knew why she had given such an order, trying to understand his motivation. He explained that this was done for training purposes so that the owner would become jealous and thus strengthen the relationship. The lady decided that all this seemed like complete madness to her, as if reason was beginning to slip away when you encountered so many invisible traps along the way. She thought about how many more of these cunning obstacles she would have to endure, and when she returned to the real world, she would certainly lock up the author and force him to rewrite everything from scratch, since she only feeds him fried dumplings. The lady noted that this was not the reason, but asked to braid his hair so that he could get up and take his place. She explained that she was simply furious at the time because he greeted her incorrectly, and it really hurt her. It was important that he greeted her properly and did not avoid her gaze. He promised to do so, and she said that he should continue to fulfill his duties. Despite his rather menacing appearance, he still remained too naive to understand all the subtleties of what was happening around him. But his physical strength and muscles were truly impressive. It was hard not to notice. The gentleman approached her from behind, asking if anything funny or unusual had happened. Elena turned around and replied that nothing funny or strange had happened at all. He noted that she seemed to be joking with the gardener, and he saw them through the window, where she looked like she was playing with a small puppy. Elena wondered why he had that particular expression on his face that was difficult to understand. She may have accidentally achieved what the old version of Elena wanted when she admitted that she punished him for not saying hello properly. Before, he would just run away, behaving inappropriately, and so she decided to punish him a little, without thinking that she had done anything wrong. The experiment showed that Hyde had been rude, and the lady said she had locked him up for 3 days for his behavior. He turned around and declared that he would do it immediately, without delay. But the lady stopped him, asking him to wait, because it was not at all necessary and did not need to be done right now. He said that the Countess's ignorant behavior deserved punishment, because such an attitude could not be ignored, and those responsible must be held accountable for their actions. The lady noted that she understood this, but then suddenly the Count appeared, trying to prove that it would be best to fire him, since he considered himself unfairly accused. The lady could not understand why he was reacting so sharply to the situation. Perhaps he was still angry and could not come to his senses after what happened. She said that everything was fine, and he promised to behave politely and with dignity, like a saint. So it was better to leave him alone so as not to aggravate the conflict. Then, he suggested going for a walk together to ease the tension a little and give time to cool down, because the situation required a delicate approach. It was necessary to smooth over the conflict. There was not much choice, and to be honest, Elena was not against such a walk, seeing it as an opportunity to diffuse the situation. Of course, she agreed, and he noticed that she did not extend her hand, although she herself considered it too awkward and preferred not to make the first move. They simply walked side by side, without holding hands, calmly and without unnecessary gestures, trying not to create inconvenience for each other. The gentleman looked up and saw an unusually beautiful sky covered with light clouds, which immediately attracted his attention and caused a feeling of peace. The lady also looked up and was delighted by this sight. Her face lit up with a smile, which showed how touched she was by this quiet moment. She told him to notice the beautiful bird soaring high in the sky, as if it were a symbol of freedom and peace that evening. He, having called the bird a bluebird, demonstrated his knowledge, and now the lady learned what this bird looked like, which had previously remained a mystery to her. After that, the bird flew away, as if to show that here, besides them, there was something else alive and real, which gave the moment a special meaning and a slight mystery. The lady said that there was no one around and asked what the sound was. The Count explained that it was a woodpecker building a house for himself in a tree nearby. She replied that she could not see anything, so the Count lifted her up in his arms so that she could examine what had attracted her attention. All this was done with one goal in mind, so that the lady could see what the Count wanted to show her and feel closer to nature. He carefully picked her up and placed her on his neck, then asked her if she really could now see what he wanted to show her. The lady said that now she could see him, and this caused her a slight excitement and joy from what was happening. At the same time, she began to worry that it was too difficult for the Count to hold her in his arms, showing concern for his condition. The gentleman reassured her that everything was fine and that she could watch as much as she wanted without fear of causing him any inconvenience. As she looked closely at his face, he thought she was simply charming and slightly illegal in her behavior. She turned away and became embarrassed, and he noticed that she was so light that it was not at all difficult to hold her, and this pleasantly surprised him. The lady said that he could now lower her because she had seen enough and no longer needed this position. He noted that this was why he had been so surprised last time that he had been able to lift her, given her fragility. She didn't understand why he said that, because she seemed very graceful and weak, although she had once been able to lift him into the air. The lady blushed and remembered the moment when she pushed him, which caused her slight embarrassment and internal discomfort. She was so shocked by that moment that she couldn't remember exactly how it happened. It was all unexpected, but it touched her very deeply. She noted that she hit him, and he liked it, thinking that maybe he was some kind of pervert and liked such moments. The gentleman said that this did not mean that he wanted to be beaten, but she decided to change the subject and calmly move on, not wanting to linger on this point. He noticed that there was a pear tree growing nearby and asked if she would like to try its fruit, offering to take the pear in her hands and appreciate the taste. She asked again in surprise, looked at the high-growing pear tree, and said that she would not be able to reach it because the fruit hung too high on the tree. The gentleman took a stone and began to throw it accurately at the pears, trying to knock them off the branches, and soon several fruits fell to the ground next to them. She was surprised by such accuracy and accurately noted that he knew how to hit the target and had clearly been doing this since childhood, demonstrating his dexterity more than once. The gentleman confirmed that this was not something unusual, since childhood he often trained like this to develop the precision and dexterity of his movements. Then, he carefully collected the fallen pears and washed them in the cold water of the lake, trying to make everything as hygienic and pleasant for her as possible. After that, he asked her to sit down next to him on a stone that lay nearby, inviting them to spend some time together in a calm environment. The lady sat down, and he handed her one of the fresh pears, offering to try the fragrant and juicy fruit, which he had just washed in the lake. But before she started eating, he decided to peel the pear so that it would be more convenient and pleasant for her to taste it, taking care of her comfort. He assured her that the fruit must be very tasty, and the lady herself said that she would definitely try it, showing interest and slight excitement. He warned her that the pear might drip juice onto her hands, so she should eat it carefully and promised to help her if necessary. When the lady tasted the pear, she was overcome with genuine admiration, and she did not hide her delight at such a sweet and fresh taste, which turned out to be beyond all expectations. The dish turned out to be very tasty, but there was something strange in the air, as if the mood around began to change for no apparent reason. He became interested in the details and began to ask how things were with that very pear, the object of attention that had raised questions in him. The lady explained that she liked it and specified where they were now going to go next, showing a clear interest in future plans. The gentleman suggested that they look at the dog kennel, believing that this place deserved attention and could be useful or interesting to them. After some time, they arrived at a place where there was a large cage with dogs under supervision and waiting for their owners. The servant turned to the master, who remarked that they had done a good job, and at the same time inquired about the condition of the brown dog, which was well known to them. The servant replied that the dog had been overcome by illness early on and was now limping slightly on his front paw, which caused everyone some concern. The gentleman asked what condition the dog was in now, and heard that he could still live, but was no longer fit for hunting. The situation was dire. This news upset the gentleman a little, as he understood that the faithful dog would soon cease to be useful and could leave their ranks forever. Then the servant said that the dog was big and had many children, and perhaps it was worth thinking about putting him to sleep to save him from suffering. The gentleman did not argue with the correction. He believed in it and noted that, it seemed, they really had no choice, and it was better to take the right, albeit difficult, step. Or you can chop off the dog's head with one blow. At this point, someone asked to stop in order to resolve the situation more carefully and thoughtfully. She asked what everyone was saying, because this dog had suffered, and therefore deserved some different treatment, despite its suffering. The servant noticed that the dog had fallen under the elephant's foot, and the lady added that he had been used for dangerous hunting, and now they wanted to get rid of him, considering him useless. The servant explained that the dog was simply following his master's instructions and was not guilty of anything, doing his job as he was told. The lady was surprised and admitted that she did not understand how many hidden complexities and pitfalls there were in this story, which at first seemed simple. He noted that Blank and Gwen, as well as other dogs with the names of her relatives, if they were harmed, were to be destroyed along with them by her order, without exception. The Duke asked if Madame was okay, since she had clearly been having problems with her memory and attention lately. The lady admitted that she herself did not understand what was happening to her, and that she was considered crazy for calling dogs her relatives and ordering them to be killed. The lady asked that the form not be touched and that it be taken care of, because it was dear to her and should not be damaged. Then the little dog wagged its tail, as if confirming that it understood everything and was ready to obey her request. The gentleman approached the dog and stroked it affectionately, showing kindness and concern for it. He noted that the form was saved because he thought he would have to send it to the village where dogs were always sent before. Other dogs were also sent to the village. That was the custom, and he wondered if the gentleman would bite the form today if he wanted to pet him. The count said that this dog belonged to her, the lady, and no one else had the right to decide its fate. The lady began to stroke the Blank and said that he was very cute and soft, radiating kindness and devotion. The Count could not believe his eyes that Elena was really changing and starting to show warm feelings for something. The lady said that it was time for them to go, so as not to linger and create unnecessary questions. On the way back, they walked holding hands, and she could not imagine what other mistakes and actions Elena could have made. Philip would be able to handle things if she didn't interfere, and Marlborough and Lila would be fine if she left them alone and didn't bother them. The Count told her that he had a special proposal for her that could interest the lady and change their relationship. The lady was surprised when he told her that he wanted her to teach them the martial art she had previously practiced. He dreamed of Layla and the knights mastering this skill, so he wanted her to help them train, making it a holy cause. He offered to teach Layla and the knights taekwondo, promising to pay for the lessons and thereby support their development. The lady thought that perhaps through training, she would be able to get closer to Layla and earn her trust. She asked if the Count thought that Layla would agree to study with her, given their complicated relationship. The gentleman smiled, assuring her that Layla would definitely agree if he asked, and suggested that she not worry about it. The gentleman said that he was ready to pay 10 gold pieces a month for 10 two-hour lessons, or to offer a house from the list for a year. But agreeing just like that was not her style, and she asked to come up with something else, promising to teach Layla for 2 hours every day. It was not a skill that was taught to everyone, and he asked if she could handle the responsibility and workload. The lady replied that she would make an exception for him, and he was delighted, promising to give her one of the houses from the list. Hearing this, she didn't even know how to react to such an unexpected proposal and change in their relationship. At this time, the gentleman was informed that Sir Sean had arrived and was waiting in the drawing room, ready to meet him. The gentleman told the lady to go first, showing respect and trust in her in this situation. The lady noted that today he was especially kind and friendly, which caused her a little surprise. This may have something to do with the fact that she asked not to kill a wounded dog, or that she agreed to teach taekwondo. The lady noted that the amount of the current assessment of the cost of purchases is fully consistent with expectations and order. Igor said that everything was organized and asked if the lady was satisfied with the work and preparation for the case. The lady confirmed that everything was fine and allowed to take only those gold items that were marked, 452 items in total, only 100 pieces, and if he doesn't want to, he can forget about it without any consequences. No one will insist if his decision is negative. He asked how much it would all cost. Igor named the price, 230 zlotys, explaining that the amount was fixed and already included all expenses. Translated into real money, this was approximately $230 million, a huge amount that made one wonder how it could be used. She didn't know what to do with this information now. The feelings of confusion and uncertainty did not leave her, and for a long time she could not find a solution. This money was clearly not enough to cover Philip's debt, so there was only one option left, which, although risky, was the only possible way out. She decided to use this money as startup capital for a business. It was necessary to increase it and gradually pay off the debt in order to get out of a difficult situation. The very next day, she approached Igor with a request to find candle manufacturers and provide her with all the necessary information to start work. To start, it was necessary to make several aromatic candles for testing in order to check the quality and understand which product would be better received by customers. However, she doubted whether she would be able to make candles of good enough quality using simple recipes to interest potential customers. Elena made several romantic and fresh candles herself, trying to put maximum attention and effort into them to achieve a good result. The smell was quite good, and at that moment, the maid announced that it was already lunchtime, reminding us that it was time to take a break. She asked to bring something simple and convenient here, so as not to be distracted from work, and at the same time to have a little refreshment. Meanwhile, she began to think that there was something missing from these candles, and decided to take a closer look at the recipe to see what could be improved. At that moment, the Count came to her and asked what the lady was doing, trying to understand why she was so immersed in her work. She replied that it was not important, and it would be better not to disturb him, insistently asking him to leave so as not to distract her from important matters. The Count did not understand why she was behaving so harshly and asked if he was disturbing her with his questions, trying to find the reason for her irritation. The lady replied that he was indeed bothering her, and this was said clearly, without any attempt to hide her feelings and irritation. However, it was better to ignore this and go about your business so as not to aggravate the situation and maintain peace in the house. The gentleman did not want to leave, but she persistently led him out of the room, leaving him no choice and showing firmness in her actions. After this, she called the servant and asked if he was busy today, trying to understand if he could help with her plans. The gentleman said that he was away, but noticed the strange behavior of the lady, which made him worry and leave him in peace. She asked the servant to call the gardener, Haid, and bring some things from the kitchen to prepare for what she had planned. The Count remained perplexed, not understanding why she needed the gardener Haid and what work he could do. But they noted with confidence that the task for the gardener would not be difficult. There was nothing to worry about. The lady would not give him hard work. The lady said that the gentleman could go about his business, but he replied that he would prefer not to leave, although he respected her position. Soon the gardener came, looking frightened and timid. He came up to listen to the lady's order. She noted that the gardener was probably familiar with the pest-repelling plants and calming scents she was looking for. The gardener confirmed that he knew these plants, and she asked him to collect them for her as soon as possible. He specified what exactly needed to be found, and the lady demanded that he collect them within an hour, emphasizing the importance of time. The gardener was struck by such urgency, but the lady only urged him to hurry without explaining the reasons. She added that if he was late, he would be punished to motivate him to complete the task without delay. The gardener quickly went off to collect the plants, and she watched him through the window, seeing how he hurried and ran. He was a very naive person, which made him an ideal candidate for a job that required simplicity and trust. He did his job well without asking too many questions. Meanwhile, the servants brought everything necessary for the process, carefully placed it in the right place, and poured water into a large bucket to prepare everything for the further actions that were to take place. The lady was sure that she would definitely succeed, she thought through every step, and hoped that what she had planned would be realized without problems and would bring the desired result. After some time, the gardener came running with a bouquet of fresh flowers and various plants, which he carefully held in his hands, trying not to damage a single petal or leaf. He said that he had brought exactly the new flowers that she had asked for earlier, and now everything was ready to use them in the intended plan or business. He also said that he had done a good job, and now he had to thoroughly wash all the flowers and plants in a bucket of water so that they would be clean and fresh for further use. She noticed that the gardener might be hungry, so she decided to offer him a piece of cake to strengthen his strength before further chores and tasks. He was a little taken aback and asked in surprise if he could really eat this cake, since it was not every day that he was offered such care and attention. The lady replied that he could eat the whole cake without restrictions, because caring for the people who help her was important and obligatory for her. The gardener began to eat the cake, and his mood immediately improved. He was sincerely pleased with the attention and support he received at that moment. He ate the whole cake quickly, showing a real appetite, which showed that such a simple gesture of kindness was to his liking. She asked him not to discuss what was happening here with anyone, in order to keep everything secret and avoid unnecessary conversations and gossip. Now it was necessary to think about how best to use the flowers and herbs brought in order to achieve the desired effect or result in their plans. Suddenly, she heard someone bowing to Philip, and she realized that events were beginning to take a new turn, requiring her attention and new decisions. She was surprised that the gentleman was here again, appearing so suddenly, as if his presence had become ordinary and habitual, although this was not at all the case. Her gaze fell on Philip, who was standing next to the gardener, discussing something quietly, and she tried to understand what exactly was being discussed. She assumed that he simply had nothing special to do, but she could not understand at all why he was constantly walking back and forth without an obvious reason. The gentleman noticed that he had just left Elena's workshop, and all his clothes were soaked with sweat from intense work. The gardener explained that he was following the lady's instructions, and the gentleman immediately tried to find out the details, as if trying to force him to tell every little detail. But the gardener firmly replied that he could not divulge secrets. Then Philip noticed that the lady was standing behind the door and listening attentively. He said he understood the situation and allowed the gardener to leave, sparing him the need to continue a conversation that was clearly not pleasant for him. Philip came here to closely monitor every step that the lady takes, as if protecting her interests and safety. Nastroy asked Igor where exactly the workshop was located, as she wanted to see everything in person and sort out the situation. She expressed a desire to find a workshop where candles are made, precisely because this could be important for her plans and further actions. Igor said that the workshop was on the outskirts, so they would have to return there late at night when no one would be around. He also noted that the place is deserted and uninhabited, which makes it unsafe, especially for strangers and visitors. There are often bandits there, and it might be better to invite a candle maker directly to the estate to avoid unnecessary risks. The lady replied that this was impossible. She had to see the workplace in person, and suggested taking security with her for safety. Igor said that he would then discuss this issue with the gentleman in order to ensure all the conditions for the trip and security. The lady thought about the robbers and the dangers of the night journey, realizing that they would have to carefully prepare for the upcoming trip. For a long time, she could not understand why Philip was here again, at this very moment, as if something was pulling him back to the estate where everything was so difficult. Philip explained that there was a danger on the outskirts of their lands, bandits, and because of this, she needed protection to avoid trouble and protect herself. She said that she did not want him to go with her, that only 2 nights would be enough, because she herself could cope with the upcoming task and did not need his accompaniment. But the gentleman categorically objected that he did not agree with such a decision, although the lady reminded him that he was busy with his own affairs and should devote time to himself. He cleared his schedule especially for this, and she was taken aback by his desire to go with her, thinking that the reason might be feelings of love. The gentleman felt awkward and embarrassed, and she secretly hoped that this was really so, because it was hard to believe that such a person could fall in love with the villain Alina. If such a handsome man confessed, it would be incredible. He reminded that they were not yet officially divorced, and if something happened to the countess, he would have big problems. She replied that she was still a countess, but most likely she did not think quite the way he imagined, and her thoughts were directed to other things. She decided that she would take with her only 2 guards, experienced and reliable enough to ensure her safety without attracting unnecessary attention. However, the master believed that with 2 nights she could be in danger, and the lady assured him that this was enough and advised him to rest, because he also needed a break. The lady said that if he had nothing to do, he could walk the dog, but he replied that if she didn't want to, he wouldn't go anywhere and would stay where he was. The lady warned the knights about possible difficulties and hoped that everything would go smoothly and without incident that day. She made it clear that she wanted him to take up walking the dog if he couldn't find something else to do, hoping to distract him. Eventually, it became his responsibility, and he had to look after the dog while the lady was doing her business or resting. While the lady sat in the carriage, she thought that perhaps Philip had said something to the 2 knights, and it could have been of great importance. She, of course, could not help but ask the knights about this, since she was interested to know what exactly they were talking about. Both knights confidently replied that the master had full confidence in their ability to take care of her safety and protection. They seemed to seriously believe that she would believe their words, although in the event of an attack by bandits, it could have been in a completely inappropriate place. Igor supported this opinion and said that it would be wonderful if no troubles or dangers happened at all. The lady also shared this hope, and they continued their journey together in the carriage, thinking about the upcoming events. Suddenly, one of the knights shouted, warning the lady to be careful, because the carriage wheel had fallen into a deep hole in the road. The lady, leaning back slightly in her seat, looked out the window, where everything looked calm and peaceful, which calmed her down a little at that moment. Everything around was simpler. There were no extra eyes, and suddenly a man approached them who looked not like an ordinary passerby, but rather like a robber. He shouted, demanding that the lady give up everything she had. Otherwise, he threatened to kill everyone present without exception. The lady got out of the carriage, and Igor quickly warned her to step aside, trying to protect her from a possible threat. She immediately noticed that these people looked little like real robbers, and rather aroused bewilderment and suspicion. They looked more like refugees than criminals, but Igor was determined that they would deal with them themselves and asked the lady not to interfere. Despite the warnings, the lady asked to wait just a minute to explain or suggest something important. She took the baskets of food and said that she could share and give them food, and even some money to help them. People were clearly happy and looked with delight at the food that was brought, which looked very appetizing and fresh. The lady added that she had even more food, and if they let them go, she would definitely bring it later. The man asked her incredulously if she thought he would believe her words, showing skepticism. After that, they ordered her to immediately give up everything she had. Otherwise, they threatened them with death, without any options. Igor sternly told them to step back so as not to create a threat and maintain control of the situation. Elena noted that she had already told her to back off, but now she was confident that she could deal with this problem herself without outside help. She started pushing all the men on the heads, as if wanting to show who was in charge here and make them feel her strength and power over the situation. The man was shocked, not expecting such determination, and she already had to endure a much greater test than she could have imagined at the beginning. Igor strictly ordered everyone to remain in place, not allowing them to move, in order to maintain order and prevent chaos among those present. The lady declared herself the Countess of the Sea, the mistress of the estate, reminding everyone who owned these lands and to whom everyone around was subordinate. She warned that if anyone attacked her, the game in which she was madly loved would take harsh revenge on them, and no one would go unpunished. Everyone around was shocked and could not believe whether everything she said was really true, whether she was so strong and powerful. The lady did not understand why they could not simply play along with her, and firmly stated that they needed to make a choice without hesitation. They had to either end all the showdowns and accept a normal life, or become enemies of the Count, which would doom them to death. The man doubted, believing that they were not afraid of her threats, because even if they all attacked together, they would not defeat her knights. She simply told them to look around carefully and think, haven't they yet realized who is in charge and strong here? The man remained perplexed, not understanding what exactly she was talking about and where she was leading this conversation. He looked at the food and at the lady, trying to find some kind of answer or understand what he should do next. The man didn't even know what choice to make and which side to take in this situation. Everything seemed too confusing to him. The lady made it clear that now the decision was his, and he himself must choose his path and the destiny that he was ready to follow. He could become a target for Messi or give up robbery and start working for her, accepting a new life and responsibilities. If it is difficult to make a decision right away, he can think about it while eating, taking his time and considering all possible options in order to then choose the most correct path. They were asked to actually do exactly as they were told, because it seemed the safest and most reasonable option for all parties involved. This decision was better than becoming enemies of the Count, because a conflict with such a powerful man could lead to serious consequences for everyone. The lady stated that while they were here, she intended to mind her own business and would not allow anyone to interfere with her plans or interests. The man agreed with the proposal and asked to return to him the person who was important to his goals or safety. Igor understood that it was dangerous to let this man go, but the lady gave permission, and he could not go against her will. The man immediately ran to his allies, or people he trusted to act according to the agreements. He had not yet felt fear, because the lady had kept her promise, warning that next time she would not hesitate and would kill without hesitation if the promises were broken. The man assured them that they should not worry, because they also keep their words and intend to fulfill the agreement. It was quickly noticed that the carriage seemed no longer fit for further travel, and the lady asked Igor to free the horses. The horses were already ready for the trip, and the lady said that she would go with Igor, intending to accompany him personally. Igor was amazed by this decision, because the lady herself admitted that she did not want to manage horses, which puzzled him. In fact, the reason was that she simply did not know how to ride a horse, and therefore preferred to avoid such activities. She said that if it is too difficult or inconvenient, then you cannot try to do it at all, so as not to create unnecessary difficulties and not complicate the situation unnecessarily. Igor assured her that everything was fine and helped her climb up, supporting her carefully and gently so that she felt confident and safe at all times. Igor was interested in how she could settle down more comfortably so that she would be comfortable and would not have to change her body position during the trip. She realized that he wanted her to lean on his arm to make it easier to hold on, because it was more comfortable and safer when moving. The lady replied that this was not necessary, because it was much more convenient for her to hold hands rather than lean on him, as she felt more comfortable feeling support that way. After that, they set off together on horseback, moving at a leisurely pace along the road, enjoying the fresh air and the silence around them. She also asked the men to take good care of the horses, as these animals were expensive and required special care and attention. The man said that his man would go with them, and if they tried to deceive him, there would be no negotiations or compromises. It was a strict threat. The lady reassured him that there was no need to worry, because she only needed loyal and honest workers, and she did not need real bandits under any circumstances. The man understood that the wrong decision could make him a slave in this situation, so he carefully weighed every step and word. In the end, he simply laughed at her, not taking her words and threats seriously, as if showing his superiority. Judging by the expressions on the faces of the knight and the count, one could understand that the count was not madly in love. His feelings remained restrained and unexpressed. She seemed very funny to him, and he wondered who she took him for, because her behavior and words seemed a little ridiculous to him. Her words often sounded empty. She chatted a lot to no avail, and therefore it was worth listening to her as little as possible, so as not to waste time on empty conversations that had no meaning. He noticed that there was a dog nearby, which caught his attention, because the animal could mean something in that situation or suggest where to go next. A gentleman came out from around the corner and immediately understood that they were most likely talking about Aliona, and this could influence the development of events in the direction he expected. The people around did not understand who was in front of them, and because of this misunderstanding, they felt angry and irritated, not knowing how to react to the unexpected appearance. But everything changed when the Count himself appeared before them with his dog, and this caused them real shock and genuine surprise. The Count looked carefully at the road, noticing that while walking the dog, she had run into wheels, as well as a point that had fallen into a hole, which could have created a danger. This man was Count Philippe Maurice, who owned these lands and had every right to control everything that happened on his territory. Everyone around was amazed and shocked that this man was the very same Count about whom there were legends and stories. The Count said that if Blank had brought him here, it meant that their own people were involved, and the situation was much more serious than it seemed at first glance. He understood that it was necessary to remove all obstacles on the road in advance in order to avoid surprises and not give the enemy a chance to succeed. Perhaps it would have been worthwhile to capture the Count and use him as a bargaining chip in negotiations in order to get what he wanted and achieve his goals. The man thought this was a great idea, believing that if negotiations could be held, they would take the money and leave calmly without entering into conflict. She began by saying that everything that was happening was their business and asked them to leave the basket where they were standing. She assured them that she was not to blame and that everything had happened because of them, no matter how hard it was. He replied that these people were bastards and he would never forgive them. His words were harsh and decisive. He was not going to forget what they had to endure because of them. At this time, the woman was riding with Igor on a horse, moving along the road to the right place. The silence around only increased the tension, and the heart beat faster with each step. Igor brought her to an old building, saying that this was the place they were heading to. The building looked abandoned and uninviting, like a place where no one had lived for a long time. The lady noticed that there seemed to be someone living here. This feeling arose from the faint sounds and movement outside the windows, which added to the alarming atmosphere. The house looked absolutely terrible, slanted, with peeling paint and a neglected garden. It seemed abandoned and unkempt, as if it had been forgotten by everyone long ago. The place was like a haunted house, empty, dark, and harboring some kind of terrible secret that you wanted to stay away from. The woman was stunned when she opened the door and saw the knights and another girl there. Their appearance was unexpected and instilled fear. She immediately fell to her knees and began to beg for mercy, shaking with fear and realizing that she was in a hopeless situation. The lady asked the knights to put away their swords because they had frightened her greatly and were interfering with the conversation. The atmosphere became slightly less tense. She told the girl not to be afraid, explaining that they had not come to harm her, but for other purposes that did not involve violence. The girl said that the Countess herself had come and was asking for mercy. This name added seriousness to the situation and made everyone fall silent. The girl explained that it had become very difficult for her to survive. Her father was ill, and she promised to repay the debt as soon as possible, just so that she would not be sold. The lady asked her not to cry, and the girl begged that if she was sold, her father would definitely die, and then there would be no point in anyone continuing to fight. The lady, looking at Igor, turned to him, expecting an answer. He, slightly lowering his voice, noted that, in his opinion, the lady really had something to do with usury, perhaps unconsciously. At this, Elena frowned slightly. She reminded him that she was providing assistance, not conducting business. However, she asked again what exactly was being discussed, since her memory of it was vague. Then the gentleman, remaining calm, suggested that they step aside and discuss this separately. He added that as a count, he knew nothing. Perhaps Igor had in mind her private loans. Igor confirmed his words explaining that he was talking about how she lent money to several local residents, and this had already been noticed by some of them. Hearing this, Elena recoiled, shocked. She could not believe that she had actually given them money. Igor was surprised by her reaction, finding it strange that she had forgotten about it. The lady then admitted that she may not have been in her right mind when she signed the divorce papers, and that this state may have influenced her actions during that period. She added that she even thought about death at the time, and perhaps that was why her memory failed. This explained her memory lapses. The lady also told Igor that if anyone suddenly asked him about this, he should simply convey everything as she had just explained, without adding anything extra. She admitted that she may have actually given money to the residents and hid it from the count. This was a deliberate act, but she tried not to tell anyone about it. Since she was lending out money, she was, in fact, behaving like a moneylender. Then she wondered what would happen now and what all this could lead to. Igor reminded that anyone who dares to break the law will certainly face a holy execution, and therefore, in this situation, everything is finally lost. There are no chances left. Igor noted that the attempt to find an explanation may not be entirely in vain, since somewhere, perhaps, there are still old records in which at least some trace of the solution can be found. She quickly pointed out that if she really knew something, she wouldn't ask questions. Igor agreed with her arguments, adding that the divorce seemed to have become too painful for her. After all, it is known that some people are so depressed that they reach a tragic end and voluntarily say goodbye to life, unable to cope with the gravity of the situation. It happens that the shock of separation from a spouse is so deep that it leaves a gaping void in a person's soul, capable of destroying even the strongest will. The girl again began to ask the lady for forgiveness, trying to hold back her tears, although she herself understood perfectly well that this would hardly be able to somehow change the attitude towards her at the moment. However, the lady replied that she did not want to see her tears, and if she did not stop crying, she would have to force her to repay the debt, because whining was driving her crazy. Then she told the girl to wash herself and tidy herself up, because they had an important conversation that could not be postponed for a minute, especially in the current situation. Surprisingly, even with such a strong wind, the task remained in force, and nothing yet interfered with its implementation, although the conditions became increasingly harsh and dangerous. When they entered, the girl did not waste time and immediately began to ask for forgiveness, as if hoping that sincere repentance would at least slightly soften her fate. She promised that she would find a way to earn money to pay as soon as possible, because now it had become a matter of honor for her and an opportunity to atone for her guilt. The lady asked when exactly the girl was going to repay the debt, because time was passing and there was no result. She wanted to understand whether she had a clear plan or just excuses. The girl promised that she would try as quickly as possible. The lady asked whether she would be able to earn money if she started making candles, because this is a painstaking business and requires effort. In response, the girl apologized regretfully and said that she could harvest the crop and then sell the wheat or chickens if she was allowed to stay on the plot with her father. The lady asked again if she knew the exact amount of the debt. The girl replied that it was 5 gold pieces, taking into account the interest, as stated in the letter. She explained that they wanted to send her to work in the tavern, but she herself dreamed of staying near her father. The girl added that the mistress even threatened to send her to the tavern, as moneylenders do. Such treatment was painful and humiliating for her. She felt like a mere commodity. Despite everything, the girl was sincerely grateful for the kindness shown by the lady. She said that she was ready to do a lot, if only to stay close to her father. For her, it was the most important thing. The lady was surprised and asked if the girl was really ready for everything. She nodded affirmatively, and then the lady asked if she could make candles for her. The girl explained that candle making was not profitable. However, the lady did not back down and wanted to know if she would agree to take up the business despite the low income. Then the girl said that if the lady wanted it, she would try. But the building was too old and ill-suited for a workshop. It needed repairs and might be unsafe. She promised to help set up the workshop, take on some of the expenses, and also find workers to help the girl, not leaving her alone with the work. At first, the girl couldn't even believe what she heard, but the lady reminded her that if she did what she did best, then she would get her debts forgiven and a chance to earn money. The girl stood there, stunned by what was happening, when the mistress sternly ordered her to stop crying, because there was no point in them and there was no time left for them. After this, the lady called Igor to her so that he would immediately hand over the candles that they had prepared in advance, without delaying the process for a minute. She looked closely at the candles, brought one closer, and noticed that the aroma was clearly unsuccessful. The smells seemed to interfere with each other. The girl was surprised how the lady could notice such a detail so accurately, and could not understand how she managed to predict the mistake in the mixing. But she only calmly explained that this was just a rough sample. It was only needed to demonstrate the idea, because she was not very good at understanding the subtleties. That's why she needed a specialist, and the girl understood this immediately, because what she saw looked like real art, as if blessed from above. Then she asked the lady to allow her to do this, and Elena, without hesitation, suggested starting cooperation by signing a contract. By this time, the Duke had already managed to punish those men. They stood before him, kneeling, covered in blood and with drooping faces, not daring to rise. He explained that these were not criminals in front of him, but refugees, and his wife insisted that they stay here despite everything that had happened. They confirmed this, and one of the men said bitterly that the Countess had shown them no mercy, even when they had neither food nor strength. They remembered her indifference for a long time. He couldn't believe it, because he was sure that his wife would never refuse to help those in trouble. She always despised indifference to the suffering. However, he then remembered how she had once personally brought them food, without waiting for the servants, and had hurried away, citing urgent matters. This action surprised him. He had to admit that the Countess had really changed lately, but he couldn't believe that it wasn't an act. He knew that not everyone was capable of genuine change. The man knew they had to come up with some other holy image, or they would all be destroyed. Hope was slipping away, and time was running out. He looked at the Count and decided to ask him to listen, hoping that at least someone would hear the desperate voice and understand how desperate their situation had become. The man explained that they were pathetic souls whom the Countess had taken in out of pity. Like a saint, she had taken them under her protection when no one else would offer her hand. He added that it was better to be her servants than to die here in fear and hunger. He became curious if others knew how cruel the Countess could be. If he had only known that the Count himself was her husband, he would have lowered his head without hesitation as a sign of respect, and would not have uttered another word. But the Count noted that the man had given his name, but still allowed himself to be mocked and impudent. Such behavior only emphasized their stupidity and ingratitude. Then the man realized that it was his grave mistake. He should not have opened up, because even noble intentions can be trampled if you say too much. He explained that he had the impression that someone was pretending to be him. Everyone thought it was an impostor, and no one believed that it was really him, even though he was telling the truth. Despite their doubts and suspicions, he trusted no one. And if Aliona really wasn't here, he had no choice but to change his tactics. Before he could do anything, unfamiliar men suddenly approached them. Their appearance was unexpected and caused alarm among those who were already in the area. Although they had only been out of the forest for a day, new people had already appeared. Everything was happening too fast for them to get used to it. One of the men, who looked older, asked if they were the same gang of robbers that had been causing fear and confusion in these parts lately. They replied that they did not need the title of lord. If they were to address one, they were simply bandits. They did not play roles. They were who they were, and they did not hide it. The man then ordered them to hand over everything they had on them. He spoke sternly and mercilessly, making it clear that he would not tolerate any concealment. He assured them that if they confessed and told the truth, then he would spare them, but he would punish them immediately for lies and stupidity, not tolerating disobedience. Without waiting for an answer, he took out of his bag an object resembling a ball, but clearly intended for another purpose, and prepared to deal with them in earnest. The bandits were confused, not understanding what this thing was. It seemed alien in this world, and they could not determine whether it represented a danger. He didn't hesitate. He suddenly rushed forward, moving sharply and with lightning speed. Too fast for them to have time to react or defend themselves. Resistance was almost impossible. He was not only agile, but also incredibly strong. The bandits simply could not cope with such an opponent. He quickly scattered them to the sides, and the robbers, of course, did not expect such a swift and decisive action on his part. They were even confused by the suddenness of what was happening. He handled the sword with great skill, and his opponents did not think that he would be such a strong and skilled fighter, which made them seriously overestimate their strength. The robbers immediately ran in different directions, trying to save themselves, but he, like Gordon, did not even look around and continued the pursuit with confidence. The Count gave a clear order to quickly tie up all the captured bandits so that they could no longer pose a threat and were completely neutralized. The men who served the Count immediately set to work and quickly tied up all the robbers, not allowing them to resist. Later, the Count and the refugees watched the captured bandits, assessing the situation and deciding what to do next with these captured men. The Count asked one of the men when Elena had promised to return, since her arrival was important for further plans. The man replied that Elena had said that she would return in about an hour, and everyone began to wait for her to appear in order to decide on the next steps. The gentleman was shocked, because Elena could see this situation, and he ordered that when the Countess came, no one should tell her that he was actually here. The man was surprised by such a request, but the Count explained that they should consider these robbers their prisoners and keep it a secret so as not to disturb Aliona. He acknowledged that capturing these bandits was a great achievement and even promised to issue them identification cards as residents of the place to cement their status. The Count asked them how they felt about this proposal, and everyone present was simply delighted at the opportunity to become official residents under his protection. The only condition was that Aliona should not find out that the Count was here. Otherwise, the situation could become complicated, and this fact had to be kept secret. The man assured that he understood all the conditions and promised that they would pretend that the Count had never appeared there, maintaining secrecy. If they don't tell her about him, she will never know what he is going to do, and everything will remain a secret until something unexpected happens. Hearing how cleverly he caught the robbers, she might finally begin to look at him differently, seeing qualities in him that she had not noticed before. She will probably say that he is a very charming person and wonder to herself why she didn't notice it before. He even felt embarrassed at the thought of this, because such feelings were unusual and unexpected for him, making his heart beat faster. Although, if you think about it, all this is not so important, and you can do without unnecessary emotions and worries, leaving everything as is. There is still a chance that she will guess that he followed her, although this remains only an assumption and does not require confirmation. It is better not to say anything unnecessary, so as not to create unnecessary problems and not to reveal your thoughts ahead of time. The men said they had gone up to the area when no one was looking, hiding the true reasons for their presence. They won't tell anything, but after some time, Elena returned to them, and the situation began to change. With her return, the atmosphere in the camp changed dramatically, and everyone felt that something important had happened. She did not understand who exactly this man was and what had happened, but they explained to her that they were robbers who had attacked them. The man noted that they had obeyed Olga, the Countess, and had not intended to attack just like that, but circumstances had turned out differently. Then these guys suddenly attacked them. A fight broke out, during which everything quickly got out of control. They were tied up, and the lady noticed that the atmosphere somehow became tense, which caused her questions and concerns. The man explained that catching them was a difficult and complicated task. He doubted whether they would be allowed to stay, because there were rumors that the inhabitants of the estate would not accept them, and life there would be hard. The lady personally had no objections to their stay, but she did not know whether Philip would give his consent, since only he could decide this issue finally, and much depended on him. She said that she had sent a messenger to the Count asking for help, and was waiting for an answer to understand how they could obtain permission for their stay and what would be required for this. The one who had gone to the Count for help returned much faster than the lady could have imagined, which caused her surprise and new questions about what was happening. She was confused and couldn't understand what exactly had happened and why so many carts had pulled up to the property. It clearly meant something important and unusual. The knight who arrived with the carts also did not have full information, and was surprised that by the time of his arrival, Everything had already been carefully prepared for the meeting. The lady expressed surprise, and the knight reported that along with the carts, they even brought prison equipment for transporting prisoners, in case there were criminals among those arriving. Igor noted that this turned out to be very useful, because now they will be able to transport prisoners in these special carts, which will significantly simplify the task. The lady wondered if Philip was hiding some abilities or skills that she was not yet aware of, and that could influence the current situation. During the carriage ride, she dozed off slightly, feeling tired from everything she had experienced. The sleep was light, but it gave her the opportunity to regain her strength a little. The Count ordered that her sleep not be disturbed, insisting that he himself would carefully carry her to the room in his arms so as not to wake her or disturb her for a moment. He noticed that she was sleeping deeply and was so tired that she did not even react to movement, which confirmed his decision not to wake her up early. As the Count carefully lifted her into his arms, he felt the pleasure of being able to care for her and carry her, feeling the warmth and closeness between them. He carried her into the bedroom and laid her on the bed with a slight smile, enjoying the moment when he could be near her and protect her peace. However, as soon as she woke up, she immediately grabbed him and pressed him to her on the bed, showing a strong desire to be closer, expressing her feelings without words. The Count asked whether she really wanted him to stay with her here, in this place, and not leave her or go far away. She confirmed her words by touching him and kissing him, which further strengthened the special bond between them. Hugging him tightly, she continued kissing, not allowing him to break the thin thread of closeness that had developed between them during this time. In the morning, she woke up and was surprised to notice that she was naked, which caused her to have unexpected feelings and questions. Looking around, she saw a gentleman next to her, which caused her confusion and anxiety from the unfamiliar situation. She did not understand what was happening and began to scream loudly, trying to understand how she ended up in this situation and what the presence of the master meant. The man, noticing her agitation, asked the Countess what exactly had happened and why she was so scared, wanting to understand the reason for her reaction. She pushed him back, continuing to express her displeasure and confusion about what was happening, while he tried to calm the situation. Unable to hold himself up, he fell to the floor again, adding even more chaos to the moment of misunderstanding between them. She asked again what was going on, trying to get at least some explanation for herself in order to understand the situation. He asked her to wait a little while to explain everything and restore calm, asking her to be patient before he told the truth. The Countess heard that it was he, Philip, who could help her in this matter, and she realized that it was he who stood before her. Then the lady realized that it was really Philip in front of her, and this changed everything in her head. She couldn't understand how he could pester a sleeping woman if she wasn't his wife at all. Philip insisted that he was not the one who had shown such impudence and indecency towards her. The gentleman confirmed that he did not harass her, and seemed to have forgotten that they were now in a period of reflection before the divorce. Philip insisted that he had received her consent for everything that happened between them, although it seemed strange. The lady could not understand when she could have given him this consent, because she certainly did not remember anything like that. He repeated that this was not the first time something like this had happened, and wondered how much longer it could go on. According to Philip, it was she who seduced him, and the lady could not believe such an accusation. The gentleman said that he brought her here when she fell asleep after caressing him, and at that moment, she allegedly kissed him. She couldn't believe it, but he said that first she kissed him, and then admitted that she wanted him. The lady was in complete shock, as if she didn't know what to think, as if everything around her was collapsing. Philip apologized, explaining that he took her behavior as consent to everything that was happening. He quietly and sadly left the room, leaving her in confusion and doubt. It turns out that it was she who seduced Philip, and he completely succumbed to her charms. The thought flashed through her mind that perhaps she had gone crazy from everything that was happening, but she could not understand why Philip succumbed to her temptation if he did not like her and never had liked her. Yesterday, he was so passionate and hot that today her body reminded her of pain and fatigue. It seemed dangerous because if things continued like this, she might get drawn into this relationship more deeply than she wanted. She realized that this couldn't go on any longer. She needed to keep her distance and not let this happen. She had a lot to do, so it was better to avoid meeting Philip for a while so as not to create new problems. Deciding to take a break, she went out for a walk in the fresh air to clear her mind and calm down. Suddenly, Igor approached her and asked how she felt after everything that happened. The lady was a little embarrassed and replied that she was fine, and then wondered why he was showing such interest. Blushing slightly, she asked where Mr. Poulter and the others were now, to which he said that there was an empty building in the forest where the Count and his men usually gathered. The lady explained that she needed to go to the city and asked for a carriage to be prepared, after which they set off. The second building, according to Igor, if it is tidied up a bit, could be used as a workshop for work and creative activities. Elena decided to sell the rest of the houses so that after receiving the money, she could rent decent housing for a whole year, which would allow her to feel more comfortable and free in the new conditions. She contacted a real estate agent and asked him to tell the owner that he wanted to sell his property. At the same time, she noted that she was interested in the deal and was ready to discuss all the details. Elena said that she plans to return and live here in a year, so it is important to her that everything goes smoothly and without unnecessary problems, because long-term plans required a clear understanding of the situation. The agent said that the owner really insists on selling, but the process is slow, and added that he would like to know where the owner currently lives so that he can establish contact with him. She was told that the owner currently lived in the village. Alyona expressed a desire for him to be invited here, as she needed to talk to him personally and clarify some important points. After some time, a man came to her and brought bad news, explaining the situation with the owner and reporting the difficulties that had arisen that had caused the delay. He apologized and explained that the owner would not be able to come and earn money, which complicated negotiations and created additional problems with the sale of the property. The lady asked what exactly the owner did and was told that he worked with flower arrangements, which was what prevented him from appearing in person, as it required a lot of time and effort. She asked the owner to convey that if he did not show up, the tax laws could change, which would affect the entire property situation and become a serious problem for her. Half an hour later, the owner finally came and greeted Elena, trying not to create discomfort and avoiding unnecessary meetings so as not to aggravate the situation. He did everything he could to ensure that the meeting went smoothly and did not cause her any inconvenience, although the tension between them was still palpable in the air. Now he was here, as she wanted, and all that was left was to check whether Elena would dare to openly tell him everything that had accumulated and express her true thoughts. In her thoughts, Elena noted that there was an amazing abundance of handsome men in this world, which could not help but attract attention, but she understood that it was important to focus on the main thing. The gentleman noted that she still retains her haughty look and incomparable beauty, which immediately catches the eye of everyone who looks at her, as if time has no power over her. The lady asked if he knew her, and he confidently answered that of course he knew her. After all, she was the same Alyona, Countess Maurice, whom he remembered well from the past. Elena was deeply shocked, hardly believing that he really recognized her, and remembered all the details related to her personality and past. He noted that a lot of time had passed since their last meeting, but she looked at him just as calmly and confidently, as if nothing had changed. He wondered if she could have forgotten about him, which seemed completely unlikely given their shared past and the significance of the meeting. Elena's mood worsened. She understood that she had done something wrong again, and she felt a heaviness in her soul because of the consequences of her actions. He noticed that she could not forget him in any way, because there was too strong a connection between them that could not simply be erased from memory. The lady began to worry and timidly admitted that she did not really remember him as she should have, as if part of her memories had disappeared. He was genuinely surprised that she didn't remember him, and when she confirmed it, his amazement turned into horror and bewilderment. The lady suggested that since he had come, they should discuss the terms in order to resolve the situation and find a mutually beneficial solution without putting the matter off for too long. She explained that she was willing to take the assignment off for a year and then pay the full price, but he couldn't understand how that was possible or why she wanted to do that. The lady thought that her conditions would be strange and incomprehensible to him, but she still wanted to test his reaction, preparing for any development of events. He suddenly stated that he wanted the man to leave the room until they were called, showing determination and confidence in his words. The lady looked closely at Igor, wanting to know if he knew this man, but Igor only shook his head, not showing the slightest emotion. She asked Igor to stay and was going to find out from the man who he was, hoping to get some clarity in the current situation. The man noted that she acted very calmly and naturally, taking a deep breath as if trying to pull herself together before talking. He knew her name before her marriage and noticed that she honestly admitted that she did not know it, not understanding why she should hide her name. The man introduced himself as Alexander Zephyrus Bourbon, giving his full name to show his seriousness. She replied that she understood, and with some irony, called him simply Alexander, as if trying not to succumb to formalities. He explained that he belonged to the royal family and noted that she was very stern, since she did not even address him by his title. The lady did not fully understand the meaning of his words, and he said that she seemed to have forgotten all the warm feelings that had once connected them. Despite her confusion, she heard that they had dated before, and then she got married, which caused her unexpected emotions. The lady was stunned because she did not expect such a turn of events at all, and became even more confused in her feelings. Igor was also shocked, and she asked him if he knew about this relationship, trying to understand the situation better. Igor apologized, saying that he did not recognize His Highness, explaining his silence and misunderstanding at the moment of the meeting. He added that the man was the 7th prince of the Bourbon family, whom he last saw when he was a child of 12 years old. Elena could not understand at all what she had done this time and how everything had become so confused because of this unexpected visit. This meant that this man was familiar to her, and also to someone with whom she had once had a relationship, which made everything even more complicated. She stated that she wanted to finish with current affairs first, and then deal with the past so as not to mix everything up. The man noted her composure and decided to agree with her plan, realizing that it was a reasonable approach to the situation. They started to draw up a contract, and he suggested just talking to discuss all the important issues in more detail. She didn't even check the contract carefully, but she signed it anyway, hoping that everything would be okay. He promised to transfer the money again, but the lady only said that she would pay when necessary. Calling him Arj, she noticed from his reaction that the plan had worked exactly as she had wanted. He admitted that he had intended to sell everything earlier, before the situation got worse, but now he decided to keep it. The lady thought about his words, realizing that he probably knew something important and was hiding it. However, she decided not to make this information public so as not to create unnecessary problems. He said it was the first time he had tried to help, and when she thanked him, he admitted that he had made things go faster. He was surprised that it was she who was doing all the work, and not the Count, and the lady could not understand who else should be doing this. He remarked that the Count had nothing to do with it, and the lady confirmed this without hesitation. He assumed that now she would no longer be able to try to avoid divorce, although she still tried to resist. So now she has a chance to marry him, which sounded unexpected. The lady wondered why she should marry him and what it meant to her at all. He explained that he loved her, regardless of whether she was divorced or not, and that was the most important thing for him. The lady said that since the contract was signed, she was leaving and was not going to change her mind. He grabbed her arm, trying to stop her and talk, but he couldn't convince her to stay. Then Igor intervened, saying that this was too much and it was time to stop. The prince began to push Igor, demanding that he not interfere in their affairs. He slapped Igor, which caused great anger in the lady. She couldn't understand how he dared to hit her knight, which was unacceptable to her. In response, she kicked him in the knee and he immediately fell to the floor, unable to stand any longer.